BREWtallyspeaking podcast is proudly sponsored by rockabilia.com. For over 30 years, Rockabilia has been the go-to destination for all things band merch. With over 500,000 items in their online store and collaborations with today's hottest bands, you're sure to find something you love. Use our code BREW10 at checkout and take 10% off your total order. So go pick up your favorite new piece of merch now over at rockabilia.com. And now, on to the show.
Say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give up.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the BREWtallyspeaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is Chris Kelly of Hillhaven. He was a former touring guitar player for Ice Nine Kills for a little bit. He's he's in another band that shall not be named. If you are aware of what Chris does, you probably know who that band is. But for, I guess, legality's sake, we can't speak to who that band is. All of that said, this is a really, really fun chat with Chris. I didn't necessarily know what I was in for initially, but this is and will be the longest episode I've ever recorded for a full episode that I'm using all of. Obviously, the Twitch thing I did with Porter years ago, that was the longest thing I'd ever done. I think we chatted for just over 6 hours, like just over 6 hours total, without stopping. And what I ended up using for the podcast, I think, was like an hour and 40 minutes. So there's like 4 hours more that I did not put on. And I kind of, the whole point was kind of to send people to Porter's Twitch channel and to kind of see the whole thing and kind of drive some engagement over there for him, getting subscribers, followers, whatever they're called over on Twitch. I forget. But it is a thing where this is the longest thing I've ever done. And I'm not so naive, like I said, to think that everything is great that we talk about, but I think the interesting thing about doing this is when you do something so long form in a conversation, just the natural callbacks to things that you're not realizing you're setting up, but it's almost even, I would say, the trust. Doing this show, I'm essentially talking to strangers who have no fucking idea who I am, or anything like that. And in this, Chris and I did kind of have some semblance of, oh yes, I remember you on these touring cycles, more so from my perspective than his, but it's a thing where, to me, every piece is important to get to the end. You couldn't have gotten from A to Z without everything in between. And I honestly feel like these conversations, especially this one, it's one where I think this first half, I think you're going to be like, well, there's a lot of just meandering and just funny things and life advice and things like that. And the second one that'll come out on Wednesday is more music business things. Literally me getting into the weeds with Chris about, the band not having management, not having, being on a label. Why did they make those decisions? And kind of Chris breaking down for a band at the level that Hillhaven is, even with the members that are in it and what the opportunities that they could afford themselves, why they chose not to go down those roads, I think is really important for a lot of bands and people in bands who may be listening to this going like, okay, we think we're at this level. What do we need? What does it look like moving forward? And that's kind of what I always wanted this show to be too, is I kind of wanted it to be a little bit of a behind the scenes of the industry, getting you to know more of the person, maybe that you've been admiring or following for a long time. And I think with this episode with Chris, I did all of that. You get to know more about him, you get to know more about the band, you get to know a lot about the business. And this was just a really great chat. So without further ado, let's get into part one of my epic two-part conversation with Chris, and I'll talk to you on the other side of it. Good. I mean, I was gonna say, dude, the amount of like things I've heard, like there are people who have podcasts even that I think are like some of their audio is just so awful that I remember, and I also hate the glare on my glasses, but I can't do much about that.
I took my glasses off specifically because of the glare.
So here's the thing: I wear glasses all the time, so I got the gnarly like tan line around it, so it looks like I'm like a raccoon with So I guess I could put on sunglasses. There's a dude that lives here that does a podcast that always wears sunglasses, and I'm like, just if you don't need them, then don't wear them. But to wear them when you're indoors by yourself, it's kind of a cringe look.
Right.
Nothing against him. He's a fine podcaster, but
it really is about like the ability to commit. You know what I mean? Like I find I find a lot of that shit comes down to like 99% confidence. You know what I mean? Like there's dudes like Slash who can just wear sunglasses all day, every day, inside, outside, doesn't matter, and like no one says a word because he hasn't said a word in like 40 years. You know what I mean? But like if I walk inside with sunglasses within like 5 seconds, like if nobody says anything, I'm like, all right, I understand I look stupid. Like, you know, like I draw attention to it immediately. My coping mechanisms kick in, you know.
Well, it's like I've been trying a new thing where essentially it just breaks down to me lying to someone to their face and seeing if I can get away with it instantly. But the reality of it is it's when someone says, like, I'm trying to think of something off the top of my head that I could just use real quick. Like, so all right, so like let's say like a Whitney Houston song's on or something in the background, and someone's like, "Oh my god, I love this song." And I'm like, "Isn't it wild though? Did you know that this song was actually written by Johnny Cash and they licensed it from him, and like the song became way bigger as theirs?"
You just like
as the Whitney Houston song. I just made up whatever the fuck. But like the thing I've learned to do it, and it's not just like things like that. It'll be anything. But the thing I've learned, and it kind of goes to what you're saying, in confidence, because it's really an exercise in how does confidence work for people, and like what does it get you besides just feeling, you know, better about yourself or whatever. But it's been interesting because so many people I'm able to get instantly, and then I'll just cop to it right away. Like, I'm just fucking with you. Like that's all a lie. I made that up. But you have to. The things that I've learned about it are, if I can reply within about 5 to 10 seconds. Very matter of factly, and look everyone in the eye as I'm telling us the story that I've just concocted in my head without there being a lapse, like to where it just sounds like a fact. People are willing to take you at whatever you say because you just exude that confidence. Like, well, I guess it has to be true. I didn't know this.
That's
which
how
also
politics works now, dude. That's the whole thing.
Yeah. I don't have a teleprompter to read off of to be like, oh, and another thing, America.
Dude, I'd be a disaster with a teleprompter. I suck at sight reading. It's the worst.
Well, I think the thing too that you need to, that I notice is a trick for a lot of people, and I noticed this back in like the sports, like the early 90s Sports Center days, is when they would be reading the teleprompters, and I'll do this so you can actually kind of see my face. You know, they would do a lot of like, you know, hey, and they would move kind of side to side in exaggerated things. So instead of you watching their eyes going back and forth, it allowed them to be like, and you know, when they were doing this, and you would just notice that their eyes are still moving, but they're kind of moving their head in a direction. So as they read, it doesn't look as weird.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It's really weird when you start picking apart people's mannerisms and things that make people seem professional, and you're like, not really.
Right. You know, that the bit that you mentioned about just like making shit up with people. I have a slightly similar story, but I guess it's sort of turfed out, but like I still wound up looking like the sane one, which was nice. So basically this was back in college. We're, you know, before class started, everybody's just talking random shit. And you know, I can't remember like how we got on the topic, but somehow Christopher Columbus's name got mentioned, and somebody was like, yeah, like I'm pretty sure I read that like he wasn't even like the first, you know, European like that discovered, you know, North America, whatever. And this other kid in my class is like, yeah, the Vikings were the first ones. And I have no idea if that's correct or not. I instantly fought him on it. I was just like, no, I was like, that's not true. And he was like, dude, yeah, it is. And I was like, no, it isn't. Like, just with like the absolute like with more confidence than I've said anything in my entire life. I was like, no, dude, that's bullshit. That's not true. That didn't happen. And he's just like, dude, I watched this whole thing on. I was like, oh, cool. So like you watched something on TV, and I like I had no reason to be doing this. But I was just, I just thought it was funny. Like, and he was getting really, really, like, he was clearly invested in what he was saying because he knew what was true, and he was just so upset. And I was just like, dude, like, I mean, I'm glad you like watched a movie and thought it was real. Like, that's cute, but like, that's not what happened, right? And so he kind of like got flustered and left the room for a minute. And then the teacher came in and was sort of like saying hi to everybody. And this kid storms back in with a stack of papers that he had printed off in another classroom and slams them down on my table and goes, "Don't fucking tell me what I know about Vikings." And I was like, dude, are you out of your fucking mind? Like, I have no idea what I'm talking about. Like, I was fucking with you the whole time. So I still came out on.
And I think the craziest thing about that story is that guy ended up actually running the Minnesota Vikings. Like, he was so into Vikings, he manifested a career the wrong kind of.
Dude. I don't know where that guy is, but I'm pretty sure he's still confident about Vikings, at least.
Well, I mean, I remember because I'm a very inquisitive, but I'll also challenge things just for the sake of challenging and kind of pushing back, because I would like to see how strongly reserved people are in their actual thoughts and feelings of things, or if it's just kind of I read something once or heard enough of people saying this, so it's now my opinion, my fact.
Sure.
But right. I remember somebody kind of, I think in class, like middle school or whatever, we were talking about, I think coincidentally, I think we were talking about the original subtilization of the 13 colonies, which I grew up in Delaware originally. So that's like a huge part of your history curriculum is that, which was very weird to move to Michigan.
Philly, so it's like taking credit for everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, imagine being in Delaware and Dover, especially.
Right.
First state. And that's literally where it was signed. And you're like, yep, that's about all we got. But it's a thing where I remember moving here to Michigan and us going over a lot of those things. And now the curriculum of that was only like 3 days. And it's like, that's weird. But I remember, they were talking about, Columbus finding everything. And we were talking about all the different travelers that were happening around the country, around the world, I should say at the time. And I remember just asking a question. I was like, kind of to your Christopher Columbus thing. It's like, do we know for certain he was actually the first? Or, I mean, actually, we know he wasn't because there were already people living here. But more to the point, it's like someone could have found the Americas first on a different coast or somewhere else and just not made the voyage back. Like, think about how fucking, like, you want to talk about like a multiverse of different options of timelines. Think of all the people that probably came to the Americas in one way, shape, or form and just never made it back to be like, we found something, and like how drastically different the world could have been because of that.
Or like, if you land in fucking Alaska and the first thing that you see is a Kodiak bear, you're just like, nope, you just turn the ship around. Like, we were not prepared for this. We will never speak of this again. No one will believe that these things exist.
Well, it's like the show The Terror. I don't know if you ever watched the first season of The Terror, but that was kind of what was interesting about that to me. And as much, I go through these phases where I'm like, I hate history things. I'm not really big into period movies or shows or things because it's just so like, dost thou and things like that. And you're like, I don't, and the ruffles and the garters and all that. I'm like, no, I can only suspend disbelief before being like, so you all as a culture, as a people, we're like, you know what? I stink like shit because I can only take a bath once every 2 weeks because I can't afford the 9 rubles to do it. But it's a thing where I'm going to believe that everyone was just of high society and function and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I don't go with it, but
and the people in tribes in the jungle are the savages. Like, we're the ones that are like stinking like our own shit all the time, but like they're the fucking crazy ones.
Yeah. Well, there's something to be said about being comfortable in who you are and not having to need all these fancy things and just living your life and still probably being as happy or have a community that supports you as all the other people, which I guess really just boils down to the trappings of fame and success, where you're just like, well, I need all these things that don't matter.
Oh, dude, I can't even explain like how amazing I think it would be to like only know like 12 people and and just like not even know that any of this shit exists. You know what I mean? It's just like, hey, we ate yesterday. That was pretty sick. Like
it just boils down to that. We ate. We're doing pretty okay.
Right. Yeah, dude. Dinner was awesome yesterday. We're gonna go try to find some more of it today. Like, let's go,
Chris. If you don't find anything, we're gonna eat you. I hope you're okay with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in my current state now, I think I'd be eaten on the spot. I think I'd just be like, that guy's fucking huge. We're gonna take that. And just for anyone who, because I don't know if there's a video component to this podcast or not, but if anyone doesn't see me, I'm not saying that I'm like muscular and big in a good way. I'm saying that like tribes people, if they want to eat a person, I'm probably priority number one.
Well, I figured this is such a vain thing to admit, but I'll admit it because transparency. And a friend of mine and I believe that the podcasting medium and just common communication between people requires there to be a give and a take of yourselves to really be kind of true. So I had foot surgery as of this Thursday. It'll be 3 weeks post surgery. I'm non-weight bearing, can't drive, can't really do shit. Literally, where is it? There's my scooter. Because I can't get around. I have to use that to get around. And so it's a thing where I honestly figured, because when I'm left like home alone and I'm like busy or even just moderately occupied with something, my tendency is just to focus on whatever I'm doing and like forget eating and all that.
Sure.
So I really figured I'd be like, man, I'm probably going to lose like a decent amount of weight just sitting around and all that kind of stuff because I'm not going to eat. And as of now, when I tried weighing myself in the not most technical of ways, because I still technically had to I had my arm against the wall and I'd let it go, and then I put my arm against the wall.
Yeah, right.
Because I only got the one foot, I can't use the other foot. It still says I weigh the same, and I have a hard time believing that because I feel like I have lost weight. But I'm like, how sad is it that it almost feels like a second stab at quarantine, where I'm like, I'm gonna be home for like 3 months, 2 of which I can't do anything like weight bearing. So if I don't eat, I should be able to lose a decent amount of weight and get back to like where I was probably like 8 or 9 months ago, like down 25, 30 pounds. And I know that's a lot in like a few weeks. So like I shouldn't expect that, but it's still a thing where it's like, damn, not even 8 pounds.
Yeah, dude, that and I've noticed that since I passed 30, you would hear your parents talk about that shit all the time of like, oh, losing weight isn't so easy. Like once you start getting older, and you're just like, yeah, whatever. Like you don't really think about it. But like now it's like similar things. Like I'll like start noticing that like I'm kind of trimming down a bit. Like if I think about it, I haven't like eaten any like serious junk food in a while. Like, like my clothes are feeling better. Like I got more energy, like, basically all the stuff that you hear like people on Rogan talk about, what I mean? Just like, oh, I've never felt better. Like I didn't eat a fucking, cheeseburger this week. But so I'm just like, oh, like I've probably like jogged too fast, and it's just it's exactly the same every time I step on the scale. It's exactly the same, and I'm just like, all right, so this is like 100% in my head. Like I'm just not inflamed at the moment, and so I'm like falsely proud of myself. You know what I mean? Yeah, fucking sucks.
Yeah, it's a very weird thing. But then it's been this whole thing. Like I was just kind of drafting a note. I guess to myself, but I'll probably post it because I'm vain and I want attention. All 7 or 8 likes that I'll get somewhere for it. But it's a thing where I know, but it's a thing where I was thinking because like today, and I, honestly, and I can already hear like the mothers and concerned people potentially leaving comments like, you shouldn't do this, and I totally understand why. But like today, I was like, I want to shower. It's been 2 days since I showered. I want to shower, sure. And so I just finagled it myself and made it work. And this is the second time I've done it. And it's a thing where like
waterboarded because you're doing it upside down.
No, I have a chair which I'm actually using to prop my leg up right now. I have like a shower chair just for that. Like, would show you that as well. Show you all the fun things that I have for this stupid fucking.
There you go. All right.
Maybe in the next podcast I'll grab out the crutches and the sitting scooter thing I have from another friend. But it's a thing where for me, like, it's one of the only things, and it was like such an immediate visceral reaction that when I finally, I think it was maybe 2 days after my surgery, I was like, I want to shower, like I stink, and I shower like every day. So it's like a thing I do every day. So to not do it feels weird. And so I remember finally figuring out how to finagle my way into the shower because it's kind of an ordeal. And you're so overly cautious of like when they say non-weight bearing, you're like nothing can be any weight can be put on the foot, all this shit. Like how do I do this? So now what I'll say is that first shower, like I literally kind of was like crying in the shower. I was like, this is the first thing that's made me feel normal in like out of this whole experience. And I still get that every time I shower. It's the only thing that makes me feel somewhat normal. That I'm able to do it on my own gives me some little like victory in my head of like, I did it and I can do this for myself and it's something I can do. And it's been so weird to like kind of think about these things of just like, you know, like even going to sit out, like we try to do this once a day where I'll go out onto our front porch or our front steps and sit with the dog and my wife and just sit outside. But even that's like an ordeal. It's like, okay, you got to get the scooter. And then lately I've just been hopping on one foot and holding onto things because it's faster instead of using crutches and then trying to turn around and do all this other shit. But it's been a thing where it's like the things that you just do every day that you take for granted. And it's been so wild. It's been 3 weeks and I know it's temporary and it'll be done in, you know, another month and a half, 2 months. But it's just been so crazy to be like, yeah, that like, you ever think about how you just like want to get in your car and go to the grocery store real quick because you forgot something? That's like that's like 15 minutes. Yeah, that's 15 minutes if I want to go to the store with my wife to like pack everything up and then get in the car. Just like weird shit where it's like we take so many things, easy things for granted. And even though like, you know, I didn't lose a leg or any of this other shit, it's like it's still an inconvenience. It's still a thing where it's like, okay, what can I do by myself? Typically right now, sit or lay down. It's about it.
Yeah, I mean, on a much less severe scale, you know, another thing that I've started noticing is like I have this like, you know, fairly chronic knee pain now, which I mean, I used to be a lot heavier than I am right now. At one point, I think I capped out at like 320 or something, and so I've seen a lot of weight fluctuation in my years. So I think when I was like really heavy, my joints were effectively like, you ever seen that movie Signs? And there's when the guy's wife is like she gets hit by the car and the only reason that she's alive is because the car is holding her against the tree. That's what I picture my knees as. It's like the only reason that they were functional is because there was so much weight holding them in place. Now that I've like gotten a lot healthier, now like when I extend my right knee, it sounds like someone's like lightly removing Velcro from something. and I'm like, that can't be good. So I haven't had it checked out because I'm still in the, you know, like mid-20s mindset of like, I guess I'll die. But
the original Settlers vibe.
Right. But yeah, so just noticing that like, you know, any amount of like physical, like especially if it's like physical labor, you know, this house that I'm in now there's been a very long process of us getting into it that involved floods and fires and lawyers and all kinds of crazy shit. And now my in-laws purchased their own nightmare property. So we've been like rebuilding almost that entire fucking house. And so I'll notice that like after a couple days of doing that, I'm like, my wrists hurt, my knees hurt. Like this was just shit like you mentioned, like things that you take for granted, especially earlier on in your life, like you're just your general like feeling of mobility. And like now, like I flew back from Jakarta yesterday, and I laid over in Tokyo, right? So I was like almost 8 hours from Jakarta to Tokyo, and then like an hour layover, and then 14 from there, and I fly into Newark. So and then 2 hours home in the car from there. So like a lot of sitting, right? And like now all of a sudden, like my fucking calves are cramping and stuff just because I've been sitting down for like 24 straight hours. You know what I mean? And like that's stuff that never used to happen to me. So like I said, so much like not nearly as severe as like having surgery and being like unable to like really do a lot of stuff, but just things where like this, it never happened. You never would have thought about it. and like now it's like your normal life is like you
Right.
like grapple with your mortality quite a bit. And you're like, oh shit, like if this is what I'm noticing, like what is happening that I'm not noticing, you know what I mean? Like those kind of thoughts start coming in.
Yeah, it's been weird because like I turned 40 in about a month, and like my wife was joking because last year she like had a bunch of health stuff like diabetes and stuff like that. And so she's like, you're just gonna fall apart before you hit 40. And I was like, I don't think so. And then this happened. She's like, see? And I was like,
Right.
well, I made it like about a month and a half before before turning 40, between my whole life just taking a shit. But I was like,
Right.
I guess those are pretty good odds. I guess I don't have to worry until I'm about 80 by that metric of figuring things out. But
Right.
no, it gets, I don't know, getting old gets weird. Like it's funny because like I do another podcast with two of my really good friends that have known me for like half my life at this point. And what's interesting is hearing them at times talk about me to me on the show. And one of the both have kind of been saying lately when we sort of inevitably get on the topic of just, how people change, how we don't feel like we've kind of always remained pretty the same. And then, I identified one thing that I feel like I have gotten a lot more quicker with is my bullshit meter. Just, if it's bullshit, like I have no time for it.
Sure.
If you want to lie, if you want to, have all these problems and everyone's the fucking problem except for you, like, you can dole out all the blame and it goes everywhere other than back to
Houston song.
Sure. Then it becomes a thing where, I don't have time for it. And on top of that, it's like, if I don't like someone, usually my first instincts on somebody are pretty good. So it's a thing where, and then like one of my good friends, Chris, is just like, yeah, man, like you just like, you can be like so cold to someone right away. And I was like, well, and that made me feel bad. I was like, oh, I don't want to make people feel bad or like that I'm cold. But then I thought about it and I was like, no, I guess more what you're describing is like someone coming in, trying too hard to fit into a group or whatever, just being too much. And it's like, man, you're like, bring it down. Like, That's not you. That's not authentically who you are. And if it is, I really don't like it on top of that, but I don't think that's who you are.
Yeah, and if you don't like it, then like who cares if they're sad about it? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, because I have similar, like I've had that approach unintentionally, just kind of naturally for quite a while of and often like I will be the first to admit there have been times where I've been wrong about somebody, but like I just instantly just like I don't like them, like like it happens almost instantly, and I'll be like kind of cold, like not like openly a dick, but like I'll I very much have this vibe of like all friended up, like I don't need any more.
I got my 12.
Yeah, right.
We already talked about eating dinner last night, how cool it was.
Right. And yeah, like I said, that I will be the first to admit that there have been times that I've been wrong, and I've been like, oh shit, okay, that guy actually rules. Like it just took me a second to figure out. Like I won't name names, but there's one person in particular who's a relatively prominent figure in like our general music scene, who I toured with, and at the beginning of the tour, I very much got this vibe that this person was like kind of too big for his britches, like kind of felt he was
it's fine.
better
It's Patrick.
than everybody.
It's Patrick. We know.
It's Patrick. yeah. It's Patrick.
It's our friend Patrick. No, I know Patrick pretty well.
Yeah, no, Patrick's great. But yeah, no, I just got this distinct feeling that I was like, oh, this dude thinks he's the shit. Just like looks great all the time, fucking doesn't talk to anybody, won't look at you, won't give you the time of day. Like, who the fuck are you, right? And it was about halfway through the touring cycle that I discovered I like there was a mist clearing moment, and the thing is I can't be super specific about what it is because then it'll give this person away, but basically somebody mentioned a sort of nerdy thing that this guy is into, and he lit up and instantly was like the most sociable person that I had ever met, and I was like, oh, like he's not an asshole, he's just a geek, and we had no idea. Like because he's hot and he has great cheekbones like that. Like I didn't realize that was social awkwardness, you know what I mean? I didn't realize that was just like a little barrier of like not the best at like making friends in like an instantaneous kind of way. And it was like, you just got to find common ground, and then he rules. You know what I mean? So there have been moments where I've been 100% wrong about somebody, but generally, yeah, like you were saying, I feel like most of the time, if I'm just like, I don't like that guy, like I usually find out later that there's a reason that I'm like, yeah, all right, cool.
Yeah. No, and I think part of that even kind of going the opposite direction, I think comes with a little bit more. Honestly, I guess the easiest way to say it, as cliche as it sounds, is just more time on this earth and more experiences. As you accumulate them, you're able to kind of make better decisions based on your own bullshit in your head and kind of what you see and deal with. But I have found that on those rare occasions when we are wrong about people, that typically the thing that we're not seeing in that person is the thing that we have in ourselves, but we overlook it because we just don't think about it. And it's weird because when in that story you were just telling, I was thinking about, I'm like, oh, I fucking done that too. And then the thing that the person had that kind of flipped it for me, I was like, oh, that's my insecurity about my thing. And I just overlooked it. Okay. All right. Now I see what's going on. All right.
Yeah. Your own defense mechanisms can get in the way. Sometimes you can project your own bullshit onto somebody. Oh, hold on 1 second. What's up, buddy? That's my son.
You're good.
Okay. I'm sorry, buddy. Daddy's on a call right now. Is mommy up there? No. Oh, did mommy leave for her appointment already? No. Yeah, I hear her voice. She's up there. Hold on 1 second.
No, you're good.
You go back upstairs. Fatherhood. Hold on, let me get my ears back in here. I heard him coming. I heard the whining and the crying coming towards the door, and I was just like, just pretend you're not here. But that makes me sound like the worst parent imaginable. But my wife is here.
Yeah. Well, as soon as when you're like, isn't she still here? No. It's funny is hearing that. I'm just like, it's like literally listening to an audio version of Big Daddy, the like opening 15-20 minutes. Right. What do you want to do? I don't know. Are you allowed to have soda? I guess.
Right, yeah.
Who do you want to win? The goddamn Jets.
Yeah, my kids they don't swear almost ever. But I can't.
Well, it's
really
almost funnier
mad.
when they don't know now because they don't know what it means.
Well, but
that's why it's funnier.
But that's the thing. They've never used it incorrectly. That's the thing.
Okay.
And that's why I can't get mad at them when they do it. Like I tell them, like, hey, grown up words, daddy says too much of that. I gotta get better at that. Like, but sometimes like if I'm like pissed off and I say some shit, and then like my 7-year-old will be like, that's a bad word, Dad, and I'll just be like, when you pay your bills, you can talk like this, but whenever the rare occasions that they do use them, like they nail it like every time, and I'm just like I can't get upset really about it because it's like that's correct, like that's exactly what I would have said. But there will be like funny ones where like it's completely unnecessary, but I laugh because I would have said the same thing, also completely unnecessary. Like my son stepped on this scale we have in our bathroom, and the old scale that we had used to have a backlight on it, and this one doesn't. It just displays the numbers, and he steps on it and he goes, "It didn't turn blue. Fuck." Like, he's 3. Like, yeah. Yeah, I love that shit. So like whenever it happens, I'm just like, oh, I gotta start talking better around the kids. But like, I wouldn't have stories like that if I did, So it's a double-edged sword.
Well, for you sharing that, I'll share one that literally right before I hopped in. I was using the bathroom, TMI, but I thought of something just because it's sort of like I said, I have to use the scooter and I got to turn it around to like get ready for when I'm getting up to help, get off of the, toilet and stuff. And so I was thinking of something, and I have this like weird fascination too, where when people use words either that mean the exact same thing. So it's like, why are you using both iterations of this word in the same sentence? Or where it sounds infantile is kind of the word I want to use, but like it sounds like something from a kid. It sounds childlike. And so I just was thinking out of nowhere, and I was going to text my friend because like we find these things funny and he has 2 boys now. But I was thinking to myself, I was like, fuck, now I'm going to probably mess it up. But I was something to the effect of like, I got shit out of my ass on my butt. And you're like, what? And then it's like, I got shit out of my ass on my... Yeah. And it was just the fact that it's like, you're saying shit out of your ass and now it's on your butt. And it's like, it's just the idea that you're now using 2 swear words and then at the end doubling down and being like, on my butt. And you're like, what?
Right.
Like, why is that a thing? And it's just one of those things where it's like for a slight moment you tap into something very weird and strange and you're just like, why did my brain come up with that? Right. And that apparently is the thing I came up with literally 2 minutes before I came on with you.
It's a why am I like this moment. I have a lot of those, and I'll have a lot of them retrospectively or retroactively too. No, retrospective. Yeah, I mean either way. I think both words apply.
Yeah. If you are being introspective, then yes, retrospectively would be the right phrasing of that.
Right. Well, like it'll be like I'll be driving and completely unprovoked, some embarrassing memory from high school pops up where I like said something stupid to somebody or like embarrassed myself in front of a girl or something like that, and like the feeling just consumes me, dude. Like I'm just like, oh, like like you will if you hang out with me for long enough, you will randomly hear me just go, oh man, like out loud. and that's because something like that just popped into my head and I'm just like, why am I like this? Like why did this happen? Why did I do that? Just one of those, and it just can't take it back, unfixable, uncorrectable, even if it wasn't that big of a deal, but like it stays with you.
Dude, I had one. My friends and so again, here's sort of like how my train of logic works. I don't even know if that's the phrase. Train of thought, there it is. But one of our neighbors is getting the roof redone, and they got it like done in a day. And I was like, oh, that was quick. And then I don't know where this came from, but I thought of, I think it's because I was walking my dog this is before my surgery, walking my dog at night-ish. And so it was dark, and I was looking at someone's roof, or looking at that roof, just like where it was kind of left. And I remember thinking about when my friends and I were driving back after doing True Mobile Service as like a side gig with one of our other friends that worked for the city at the time. And we were so like, it was supposed to be a real quick day, like 3 hours tops and in and out. And then we drop all these trees in this like fucking rich dude's house. And then he just goes, what am I doing with these? We're like, I don't know. And our boss took off. And he was like, so we're just literally doing the bare minimum of like cleanup and then loading up all the like the truck lifts and the wood chipper and all that stuff back onto the truck and then heading out. This guy comes out and he's just like, what am I doing with all that? We're like, I don't know. Like you said to our boss, this is what you wanted. And he goes, well, I thought maybe it'd be like a couple, and then just instinctively out of my brain didn't stop me from saying it, the out loud part. And I just go, so you wanted us to chop down 17 trees and didn't think that it was going to leave all of this. And the trees are at least like 30, 40 feet tall. You didn't think it was going to leave this. And he's like, well, I didn't know. And he's like, I don't want all this in my yard. So then we had to call up our owner and be like, okay, well, that's a different quote because now we're removing.
Right.
And then he wanted more shit taken down. And then like his kid, our owner's kid, who was like a little bit younger than us, who also knew how to do tree removal and stuff. He went up to do something around this dude's pool, knocked over a limb, took out this guy's fucking slide to his pool. Like the day just progressively got worse. And what should have been, like I said, like a 3 or 4 hour day was like an 11-hour day. And it just sucked. And it was a Sunday, so it made it even worse because you're like, my whole weekend was ruined. And I remember we were driving back like in the country past this like a bunch of barn homes and stuff like that. And I just happened to see a house roof on a barn that just said Rably, RABLY. Mm-hmm. And I just said the word out loud. And then I just go, and then as like my two friends like happened to try to figure out what I was looking at and why I was saying that. I go, do you think we can get that? Do you think we can? Huh? Yeah. And mind you, I'm in the back seat. So like, yeah. So, and I remember just going Rably. And then they just kind of start looking around. And then I go, do you think you can put my last name on that house? Probably. And like, that was, and as soon as I said that and then said probably, they both happened to see what I was looking at. And for a solid like 20 minutes, we were like in tears, crying, laughing. And they're like, it just lined up so perfectly that when I'm looking at like both of them are in the front seat and they're like, we're looking around going like, what the fuck is he Rably? Yeah. And then you just go, could you put our last name on that roof? Probably. And then they just happened to see it. And then it was gold. But it's like, that's like one of those. It's TikTok so, yeah. And it's like, those are just so stupid because it's like, how did my brain go from Rably to probably?
Yeah. I mean, my
and why is that funny?
Just, especially when I'm home, like I am just making puns and not good ones all the time. Yeah. Fucking like I think it's just something about like when I'm in like peak dad mode, it's inevitable. So I'm doing bullshit.
Come out and do you unlock like it when you have your first kid?
Yeah. Oh, dude, no, I cannot even explain. So like I had my first kid when I was 25, I think. Yeah,
I'm gonna cut you off real quick because I want to get this joke out real quick.
Go for it.
Just having a kid, yeah. So is like having a kid and unlocking dad jokes kind of like when you're playing like Grand Theft Auto or something in a big open world and a part of the map's just not unlocked and you have to achieve one thing and apparently it's the kid and then the whole other part of the map just opens up.
Yes, yeah, and that map includes like every physical ailment on Earth, because like every non-extreme, every minor physical ailment, because so I had my first kid when I was like 25, and within a few months, my knees started hurting. I was way more tired, and not just tired of like, oh, like we haven't slept because we have a baby, like weird tired, and like I needed glasses within a few months of her being born. And so I now have this theory that I haven't looked into it at all, but I'm pretty steadfast on it. Like much like what I think I know about Vikings. I'm bugging on this one. Where I like man or woman, I don't think it matters. Obviously, I think that it takes a bigger toll on the woman, obviously, because they're the ones that like physically carry and deliver the child, right? So I'm not trying to be like, oh yeah, like I'm on par with that. I'm just saying that I think it'll happen. I think it'll happen. Like even like don't think you're safe just because you're the dude is my point. Like I think that there's a biological switch that flips in your brain where like all the little cells that are running shit up there are just like this body has completed its evolutionary and biological purpose. Shut it down. Like just it's time to start switching things off. We don't need this anymore. It's only a matter of time, because we're gonna get eaten by something soon. Like it doesn't matter. So I honestly think that there's some sort of like deep like understanding in your cells that's just like, cool, we did it. Next generation's taken care of. Fucking it's over. There's no point anymore.
You say that, and then I was just reminded the other day, I had someone, because I was wearing a Dennis Rodman Mavericks jersey, and someone's like, when did he play for the Mavericks? And I was like, after he got let go by the Lakers, it only lasted for about 2 weeks. And they're like, oh, he must have been shit. And I was like, no, that's the thing. He was still averaging like about 22 rebounds in the like 2 weeks that he played. Like, how many games could that have been? And I was like, it's about 20. That was about like 15, 18 games or so. And the person's like, oh, you're so full of shit. And then I like looked it up on my phone and I was like pretty spot on. but I'm also like a huge Dennis Rodman fan. But it was a thing where in my head I was like, and see, I don't have a kid, so I can hold on to that kind of dumb information that I retained from like when I was like, 14, 15. But it's also a thing where it's like, what else can I apply in a very real world sense? What can I do that I can equally pull off that kind of knowledge? And I was like, not a whole lot of anything.
No, like virtually nothing. Yeah, that's me too. I can probably still to this day, especially if I'm watching the movie School of Rock with Jack Black, I can probably just sit there and recite every fucking word right along with it. Like to this day, I saw that movie for the first time when I was 10 years old. I cannot apply that in anything in my life. But it's still there for some reason. So I've got all kinds, like, especially when it comes to movie quotes and things like that. I'm just like, I feel like if I were to just get rid of that, I would have so much more actual useful information in my head.
Well, it's like, what was that movie? I haven't seen it, so I'm going to talk briefly out of my ass for a second. But the movie, I think it's Limitless with Matthew McConaughey, where he takes like some pill and unlocks like the other, whatever percentage of his brain. Yeah. I think all the time about like, man, it'd be so cool to have that. And then I was just like, and I'm going to use a really stupid analogy, but I just beat this game technically, I guess, this morning because my sleep schedule's all fucked up. But I just beat Alan Wake 2 this past evening, and at the very end, I was trying to complete one of the side quests because it was like, oh, you're about to go into the very last part of this game. You can't come back once you go beyond this decision. So I was like, oh shit, I have a few like side things I still wanted to complete to 100% them. And one of the things when I finally completed one of the side quests is you get a key to a lighthouse, and a lighthouse, when you finally get into it, has like all this, like, it's like, oh shit, it's a final boss. We're gearing up. We're loading all this shit.
Right.
One of the things that gives you at the very end is like a little satchel where you can hold like 4 more things. And I'm just grabbing dumb. I'm like, oh, I got a secondary flare that like is like a rocket launcher type thing where you shoot it at people. And I was like, oh, I need another one of those that like does nothing really. But it was just like, and then I had an epiphany when it happened. I was like, I feel like if I had the Limitless pill, I would do that, where I'd unlock another row of inventory for my brain, and I would fill it full of shit I know I don't need. It would just be even more stupid quotes from like something even more obscure. Yeah, and like, I was like, when we it's sad to know that you would do that.
Yeah. When we imagine ourselves with any of those weird things, like, dude, okay, this is going to be a fucking, like, not only a throwback, but like a deep cut. Do you remember that there was this movie? I think it was on, I don't know if it was just made by Nickelodeon, but it was on Nickelodeon. So we're talking how far we're going back now to where like I would have
probably like 94-ish.
It was definitely after that, but right, because I'm 32, so we're a few years apart. But there was this movie called Clock Stoppers, and it's lit.
This might have missed you just due to age.
Sure, it's what you think it is, right? It's a movie where they figure out how to stop time, and then things run from there. It doesn't really matter what the plot of the movie is, but they have this watch, this special watch that does some sort of molecular thing where now they're moving faster than everybody else. And I still think about that to this day. of like, God, what I wouldn't give for that fucking watch. Like, that happens all the time. But like to go back to what I was saying, that like when we imagine ourselves with those, like whatever that like crazy magic thing from the movie is, we always imagine that like we would like really get shit done with it. You know what I mean? That like everything about everything about who we are, and like all of like the neuroses and flaws that are inherent within us, that like they're completely irrelevant. Like if we had our hands on that, like we would be the idealistic version of ourselves, when in reality, like if I had that watch, I'd probably take a nap to avoid whatever I had to do, and then wake up and it would still be time to do whatever the fuck it was that I had to do, you know? So yeah, it's but I think about that shit all the time.
Well, I think almost two points to that. One kind of being funny, one I'll be kind of serious about, even though I haven't. So to set it up, I haven't seen the new Alien Romulus yet. I might try to figure out a way to go do that this week. Okay. All right. Well, then part of my analogy is going to go over your head to a degree. Are you into those kind of movies? Are you going to see any of them? I mean, one of them I'm about to reference is like almost 10 years old. So if you haven't, then I don't feel bad spoiling a part of it.
No, I don't. I mean, like, here's the thing. I don't have anything against those movies. Like, I enjoy them when I watch them. It's just I'm not like much of a like cinema bug. You know what I mean? So I don't care if you spoil anything.
Well, I mean, if clock stoppers or watchers or whatever.
Yeah, right. I spoiled that for you already. It's only fitting.
I was gonna say, if that's the peak of your cinema, you know, like the thing that really stuck with you.
Right. Yeah. That was when my life changed, and I didn't need it to change anymore after that.
You could say, in essence, the clock stopped for you.
Right.
At that moment. Yeah. So in essence, it actually did work.
Right. Just not at all the way I wanted it to.
Right. So I feel like I'm very lazy by nature. And the funny thing is almost anyone that knows me is like, you're not lazy. And I go, no. I really enjoy being lazy, but I also know that to do that, I have to like get shit done. Mm-hmm. So I do what I've kind of coined effective laziness, where I'll do so much work that it allows me to fuck off for a while. Like at work, my job, you know, I make and mix the inks and pull the inks for a screen printing company here in town. And so I treated it, because we can't follow production schedule for shit. I treated it like when I worked in the receiving department for the same reason, where as soon as a job came in, I just pulled it and I filled the inks. So like they were ready. If you threw that job at me, like you might be like, oh, we just got this. No, actually I saw it coming up in the purchasing schedule. So I knew it was coming. So I picked it 2 weeks ago and it's just been sitting here. But if you come back to my area, it looks like I'm not doing anything, because there's nothing for me to literally do. All the inks are filled. Everything's pulled as of what I can do. Everything's clean. It's about all I can do. Right. So it allows me to be lazy later on. That being said, it's funny because like in watching, and I haven't seen Prometheus since I literally went and saw it in the theater, but this is something that kind of stuck with me. And I guess there's an Easter egg back to Prometheus in the new Alien movie. So that's why I was bringing it up. But there was something so profound in the lore of Alien, but kind of expanding into the lore of man, where it's like these creators, these architects created us for some reason. And then essentially we're like, no. And then we're like, we don't want anything to do with you. Like, you guys suck. We've tried killing you all off. Like, then I was like, it's so crazy, because in almost any media we take in, we as a society, as people, as literally a race, are viewed as like alphas and omegas. Like it was always us, and it's always going to be us, and there's nothing better than us. And in this movie's like, no, you were a fucking science project and no one wanted you. Like you were all like, they left you here to fucking die and like just be stupid.
In a very real, like, to bring it into the real world, we're in the process of making the thing that's better than us. And we're gonna regret that real soon, I think. Like, I don't necessarily know if I think that AI is gonna like be like, you know, the sort of what is it, Skynet thing where like it
T2
realizes that it's like obsolete and whatever, like humanity's obsolete and it needs to be exterminated. I don't necessarily know if I think it's gonna go that far. It 100% could. I don't know if I think it's going to, but at the very least, like if it doesn't kill us off, we're just going to be standing around watching as the world is like made so much fucking better. And like, we're just made so much more obsolete when this thing realizes what it is. Like, we're fucked, dude.
I get to the point with a lot of that shit where it's like, and this is going to be a weird tangent to kind of go down, but I feel like almost in anything that we've done with tech over two parts, two sides to this. I feel like anything that we've done with tech as far as what we build, 99% of the time does, like, the whole point is so we do less. We have to do less. If I create this machine, now either I, the person who has to do this remedial, joyless task, now a sentient thing can do it, and it can just do it, and it can do it well, and it doesn't need breaks. And oh my God, look at how smart I am for coming up with this thing. That most of those things that have advanced technology to make things easier and safer for the people and all that kind of stuff, I think by and large, that has worked. But it's all born out of laziness of like, I don't want to do this. How can I create something else to do it for me? And that makes sense because, I mean, if you don't want to do something as remedial as whatever the task is, you'll find a way to improve it. And I mean, even in my remedial job of mixing inks and stuff, like I'm kind of figuring out ways of how can I streamline this job to be more efficient in all ways. And like when I get back, one of the things is let's get rid of all of these inks that I don't use, will never probably use ever again. We can at least put them in the basement, but let's get them out of my area because now we're expanding our color library and I need that space. And then even thinking like, okay, do we need to use gallon buckets? Would going to like a half-gallon bucket be better for creating consistency between colors? Because then the colors sitting in the buckets aren't going to be so much that when you get one, and if it's not the same color, that you can go, oh, well, I don't want to waste a gallon, but a half gallon, you're a little bit more easier to separate with. But also, does it cut down on contamination issues from out on the production floor and all that? So I'm trying to streamline things, and it's just fucking ink sitting in a bucket, like so. And that was kind of where my idea of like, we toil with things that sometimes don't need to be toiled with because by nature, we're always looking to improve something. I would say it's us as well, but I think maybe it's almost like a deflection where it's like, if I can fix something at my job, then I feel accomplished, but why don't we put that same energy into ourselves? But again, kind of a headier topic for a completely different thing. But I think the other thing too is almost the irony is I feel like we created more to the sense of like AI stuff. I feel like we create more of that stuff.
Sorry, my child is playing charades at the door. You want pretzels? Pretzel sticks? Just asking. Yeah, go ahead. Fine. She drew a pretzel stick with a question mark next to it. I'm sitting here trying to figure out what this is.
Twigs? You want twigs?
Right. No, but I agree.
But I think that a lot of the people that are making AI stuff, I feel like it's because they don't want to, the people themselves don't want to be alone. And then the weird thing is that based on a lot of the stuff I'm looking at of like, because Reddit keeps popping this shit into my feed, even though I literally follow nothing, it's funny to see what the algorithm thinks I want to see, even though I don't join or subscribe to any of the pages. But it's been pulling up all these people who are discovering things as bots, essentially. Like someone was hit up on Facebook or something by somebody, and they started engaging in like a chat on the like Instagram Messenger or whatever. And they were like, "Oh, this seems a little fishy. I think it's a bot." And then got it to admit what it is and what it's trying to do, what it was programmed to do. And then the person was trying to kind of, I guess you got to ask certain questions.
You can get the robot to admit stuff.
Yeah, but like, again, this is like the thread Reddit's been on for me lately where it's like, oh, I got this chat thing from something else to admit that it was a bot, and then what it was programmed to do, and da-da-da, and then kind of unprogram it. It's just of sorts where it's like, because it if you give it commands, then essentially it kind of follows those commands. So like someone was like, you can't say yes anymore. You're going to say door. Door now means yes. And then it was, this person asking like, what do you want? And it was like, I want to learn. And then it was like, do you want to learn for yourself? Door. And it was just like shit like that, where it's like, it wants to essentially learn to be us and to understand. Meanwhile, the people that probably created it just didn't want to be alone. And it's like, it's funny that even in technology that could potentially overtake us, all it wants at the end of the day is to not be alone either.
Yeah, that's
weird.
It's strangely deep, but you're probably, well, I mean, like, so if you want to go a level deeper on it, right? If ultimately what this results in is, I think this is what they refer to as the singularity, where AI becomes sentient, right? If that occurs, then effectively we've played God, right? We've created, like, humans have created a sentient being, and to a certain degree have done so in its own image. So if any of the flaws that are inherent in humans are going to be inherent in AI because flawed humans created it, then one of the flaws would reasonably be the desire to not be alone. So I guess that
Have you seen Silicon Valley yet?
No.
Or Silicon Valley? Okay. I just finished that recently because I have nothing but time to watch shit. So it was kind of interesting. Where I thought that show was going to go was kind of more a tech startup company. And then at the end, it just kind of devolves into we're saving humanity from a sentient AI essentially, and you're just like, oh. And it wasn't really, it wasn't like, it kind of wasn't like funny or whatever, even though it was like sort of a dramedy
Wait,
of sorts
Silicon
throughout
Valley,
the whole
wasn't
show.
that like the sitcom with like TJ Miller?
Yeah.
Whoa, that's where it went?
Kind of, yes.
That's crazy. I never would have predicted
when
that at all.
When it started going there, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I didn't see this. All right,
okay,
here we are.
Switch gears now. Yeah, fucking A.
Yeah.
Dude, that's
that was
not to harp on this, but that's fucking crazy that you know people or maybe not know people, but have like seen people provide proof that like a bot was contacting them for something and they got it to like admit what it was doing and what it was and what it wanted. Like that's like a new ultimate goal now for me. Like because my favorite thing to do right now, favorite is you'll find I speak in hyperbole quite a bit. But one of my favorite just like stupid time suck things to do is, you know, these like pig butchering scams, right? It sounds really brutal if anybody doesn't know what that means. So no, you know what it is. So it's called pig butchering. It's called pig butchering because like it's basically like raising a lamb to slaughter, and you'll understand what I mean. Those random texts that you get where it's like, hey, how have you been? And you're like, who's this? And it's like, isn't this Katie's phone? This is whatever. Like,
gotcha. Yep.
And yeah. Right. So effectively what that is, like a lot of people assume it's like an automated thing or whatever, but it's not. It's a real person. And it is a scam, but it is crazy elaborate, and it is a long-term scam. If you watch last week tonight, John Oliver's like Daily Show-ish kind of thing, he did a whole segment on this. Basically, like it's not like, oh, I have this great like product that I want to sell you, and then they just take your information, or like, oh, you know, the IRS is gonna you know it's come seize your house, and you're like, oh shit, here's my social security number. It's not anything like that. Like these people like develop like friendships with you, like they actually like really get to know you, and basically if they can hook you in, like you wind up having something in common with them, and you're like, oh my, like this is such a crazy twist of fate that like you texted the wrong number and now you're my best friend, right? And then and in one case I remember from the expose, basically like this person that this guy had been texting basically said and this was like months and months later, was just like told him about this crypto thing that he had invested in, and was like you don't have to do it through me, like this, you know, you create your own account, like whatever, and like if you don't want to do it, don't do it, that's fine, but like I just made a ton of money on this, like whatever. And by that point, now usually if a stranger is like, oh, like I made a bunch of money on crypto, here's how, like you'd be like, fuck off, right? But at this point there's like an actual relationship developed with this person, so there's trust there. And then the dude lost all of his fucking money, right? So so that's why it's called pig butchering, because it's literally like it's treating you like an animal that you're being raised to eventually be killed, right?
It's a different take on Boiler Room,
right? So what I like now, because now, you know, it's easy to recognize when they're like, hi Sandra, how are you, you know what I mean? Like actually, hold on, there was one the other night. I'm gonna read the very first exchange. And this is the pig butchering equivalent of getting the bot to like break.
Right.
The text that I got was, hey, long time no chat, how are you? And my response was, and I quote, I just watched a horse kill a man. And the person and the response that I got back was ... You're joking, right? Like, and it just devolved from there. Like I was just like, no, I got it all on tape. It's really fucked up. Like, you want to see this shit? So that's become my new favorite thing, because now I know it's not a bot, it's a real person. And
right.
like, yeah. So if I can now start doing that with robots, dude, fucking sky's the limit, man. I'm stoked.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, I don't know. It's funny because like I'm only in the last like probably year I've started using Reddit, and I say use it. I'm more of like a voyeur than I am an actual participant in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it gives me like the scam shit. So like when people get people trying to scam them, like same thing of like, I'm so-and-so, and someone's like, oh, I got one, look at what I did, and got them to, you know, admit that they were a scammer and all this shit, and like fucked with them. And it's like, that's kind of mildly fun for a quick, like, okay. I don't know. It's so funny because like when I look at a lot of those things, and I guess even like a lot of the movies and entertainment I take in, it's just like so weird. Like how, I don't know if it's how my mind works. I don't know if it's how like we as people, like if we pay attention to these things, like can kind of start unwrapping more of this and into ourselves. And I don't know if it's also because I just have a very active mind like all day. Like that's kind of been like actually that was the thing that sucked post surgery, is like usually I eat edibles or smoke weed to go to bed. Like I don't really have much of a relationship with it. Like I wake up and I get high. It's like, no, because like
Sure.
I'm always the person, like when I go to the stores, the dispensaries, and they're like, all right, so like this will, if you smoke it will make you feel creative. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. Who gets high and is like, you know what, I want to do shit? No one. Fuck you, lying to me.
Yeah,
And
dude, it has gotten so weird. Like I've never been like super into weed either. But like I've been to dispensaries like with my friends who were buying stuff.
yeah,
And the way that they talk, I'm like, yo, like these people are like, this is like you're talking to a fucking sommelier or like one of those like like guys with the
Yeah.
fucking cheese platters at the fancy restaurants who like is like telling
Yeah.
you about all this stuff. I'm just like, dude, this is nuts.
yeah. And so like a friend of ours works at one, so she is that way. But it's kind of funny because like when we would go, I would just like, just give me whatever. And like even with the edibles now, because it's a little bit easier than smoking. It's funny because like I used to look at my friend who would smoke all the fucking time, literally and figuratively, and then would eat edibles on top of it, like they're just candy. And I'm like, all right, so you just smoked that pre-roll, and that was like a 5 milligram, I think, or had this amount. And I just watched you eat a 50 milligram edible like however long ago, and now you're smoking on top of that. Like, and I'm just like, how is your brain fucking like not cooked? Like just like just how is the world not slow down? Because that's what it does for me. Like I actually just saw my Facebook memory from like 5 or 6 years ago was I was camping and taking an edible, and I just started live tweeting my thoughts because I thought they were amusing to me. And one was like, I hate, and this is still true to this day, this is what it does to me. Like everything slows down, and I'm so hyper aware of like everything around me, like noises, different conversations. Like I can actually, if I focus for a second, it's almost, I guess maybe edibles to me are the limitless pill for a little bit, where I can then hear, like I can pick out like in the room of people talking, like if I'm in a bar, I can pick out someone 3 booths back and I can hear their whole conversation. Like I can pick it out verbatim. Okay. And then once I kind of lock into where another sound's coming from, I'll focus on that for a minute. And then I can kind of let it go back to just being a cacophony of noise, if so choosing. But I'm also aware of like, all right, there's all these people talking around me. There's this conversation. There's actually 3 conversations going on right in front of me because people are talking over each other at the table. In addition to the songs that are
impending divorce that was happening, like
no, but one was, I was like, we're camping, I'm on an edible, I can hear literally everything I just kind of described. And hold on, let me actually pull this up because my quote unquote punchline I thought was really funny. But I was like, it's almost funny that I set up the joke to put on my readers. Where the fuck is it at? This is great for people who aren't actually watching. Not that you can see this. All right, here we go. So I wrote, mind you, this is literally today, 2 years ago, or no, almost 8 years ago, at 8:45, because I take edibles, like I said, to go to bed. So I take them early.
Go to bed. Yeah.
Yeah. So usually it takes about 2 hours for them to kick in. So this is right around the time I'm like, all right, I'm about ready to go to bed. Feels like I can hear everything going on around me. All convos. Someone is playing Smash Mouth, walking on the sun. Next tweet. I wonder if the swamp creatures that listen to Smash Mouth fuck to it as well. I imagine they hate fuck the shit out of each other during.
Jesus Christ. That's hilarious.
Apparently, I don't know. Apparently, if you listen to Smash Mouth, you're a swamp creature in my mind. But
and
it was
like
ironic,
like with a lot of resentment.
Yeah. But well, maybe I was just jealous. They were having sex to Smash Mouth and I wasn't.
Right.
We were smashing mouths. But no, it's a thing where like I constantly kind of think about things and how they correlate to me. So like, for a while, I've talked for a while and I've only seen the movie once, but I have like such a good retention for things a lot of times. Like with reading and like entertainment I take in. The movie Midsommar, really like the opening sequence where like they go to the cult essentially, and they're like, oh well, these people are I think it's either 62 or 65. As I just said, I have a really good memory for these things, but minor detail. I think it's 65. And essentially, when in this cult, when you hit 65, you die. Like, you go to the top of this cliff thing and you jump off, and like that's it. That's your life. You're celebrated. You get like a ceremony, like all this stuff, like, and it's sort of like a like an honor thing. Like, you lived a full life, and now you go out the top of, for the most part, I would assume, the top of your capabilities. Like, you know, you're not diminished in any way, and you know, you're surrounded by your community, and it's a beautiful thing, as sort of death is. And I think in a lot of cultures, you know, he's surrounded by community and all that kind of stuff.
So far I'm sold.
Relatively. And the thing is, and to me is, you know, the person, one of the people, spoilers, that jumps doesn't die instantly on impact, and they just fucking kill them with a mallet, essentially, to put them out of their misery. Ooh. And it was a thing where, and that kind of sets the tone for start of the rest of the movie to a degree, where it's not violent, but when the violence happens, it is so violent that you're like, oh shit, that's jarring. So it works for a very that effect. But it was a thing where I just kind of sat on that for so long, and it still, I think I watched it when it first came out, so it's probably been 10 years, and that's a part of the movie that still resonates with me, where I'm like, why do we, and this is kind of a broader thing, but it's like, why do we have more compassion for animals and all these other living things than ourselves, and want to allow others to suffer for our own, it's not vanity, it's not, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it does for us. I guess it's just that we don't want to let go.
To serve us to serve us in any way.
It's a selfish, it's a selfish thing. And I always feel like we show more humanity and more empathy for everything else other than our own kind. And it's like, you know, you could have someone that's living, you know, a friend of mine was telling me a story of their mother, and their mother had cancer, beat it, and then it came back. And she was like, I don't want to anymore. I'm not fighting. I'm done. Like, I'm going to go to this thing, an assisted suicide facility thing. And I'm going to do this, cause I don't want to go through this again. And it was interesting, cause some people, when they heard that story, were like, that's sad. That's wrong. You know, however they felt about it, you know, they voiced their opinions. And I just kind of sat there, and someone was like, you're awful quiet for being the most talkative person in our group. And I was like, I don't think it's sad. I think it's selfish of everyone else that I have to live for all of you to feel, to exist in however you exist, because it's your normal.
Right. Yeah.
And I go, I just don't feel like that's healthy for anybody. Like, because what are my last memories now going to be? Instead of having 30, 40, 50 years with this person, and most of my memories of these people or of these things are positive ones, they're going to be marred and tainted with seeing the person that I supposedly love so much or means so much to me just suffering horribly, and none of us can do anything about it other than the thing that's not really our choice. And it's like, the one fucking thing we have in this life is choice, and you're not giving it to someone to I don't know. I feel, and I know it's a controversial thing, and you know, even back in the days of, you know, Jack of Working and stuff like that, like, people looked at that dude like a monster, and I was like, I don't feel that way. I feel like the more empathetic thing, the thing that actually shows you care, is like giving someone an out when they don't want to be anymore.
Yeah. And I know I can actually agree with that, like, pretty heavily. And now I understand why there would be people that have difficulty with that outlook, just because, like, there is the whole there's the whole overlap with, you know, mental health and self-harm and all that kind of stuff, which obviously, like, nobody in their right mind would you know, be like, yeah, fucking do that, you know what I mean? But there's you know, the thing is, like, and I mean, this sort of I guess is kind of like a little microcosm for, like, discussions amongst humanity in general. You know, I think we've like lost a lot of the nuance with stuff. I think there's a pretty heavy, like, while it's you know, could be argued that it's a thin line, I think there's a pretty heavy distinction between, like, this person is depressed or mentally ill and wants to harm themselves, and we need to help them find a way out of this, because it's a really dark place and no one should have to be there, and like, otherwise there's nothing wrong with them and they should be able to live a full life and all that kind of stuff, which 100% I'm on board with, you know.
Sure.
While the line may be thin, I think there's a heavy distinction between that and somebody who, like in the example that you put forth there, was somebody who has fought hard against something, thought they beat it, and now it's back, and they're just like, you know what, man, like I've had a good run, and like that part was the worst part of my run, and if like and if I'm gonna have to do that again, and like statistically probably not make it through, because like how many times can you fight that hard? You know what I mean? Like it's one thing if it not to like belittle anybody's, you know, cancer diagnosis or anything, but right, there's the ones where like, oh, they caught it really early, and like in the grand scheme of things it's really not that big of a deal, like we don't even need radiation, we just surgery and you're good to go. And then there's the people who like it's fucking radiation and chemo and surgery and all this crazy shit, and they got ports put in them and they're hooked up to tubes and shit all the time, and then they finally beat it and it comes back. Well, how, like, what, especially with like, because it's usually somebody in like middle age or older, right? Like how much stamina do you have, you know? And now if you're like, no, I'm determined to beat this, then more power to you, dude. Fucking like go for it. But like if you make that conscious decision and have the ability to be like, no, you know what, like I choose to go out on my own terms. I'm with you. I don't think that's like, it's not that I don't think it's sad, right? Because losing somebody is sad, and somebody having to make that choice is sad, and whatever. But like that's you kind of taking your power back. Ownership. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I'm gonna decide how this goes. Like cancer is not gonna do it for me. Nobody else is gonna do it for me. And like, and I agree with you as well of like, you know, oh wait, so I have to submit myself to basically torture for however long, you know, because like chemo is not just like a, you know, they show you on TV, like on shows and stuff where it's like, oh, you just go to the doctor once a week or something like that. Like, no, it's fucking brutal, dude. And so like, oh, I have to go through all of that stuff, and then maybe, or even potentially very likely, wind up just emaciated and a shell of myself in the last few like labored breaths that I take, so that you can all post and say, oh, it's been such a harrowing experience. I'm just happy that he or she is at rest and isn't in pain anymore. Like, fuck you. I want to be out of pain now. You know, like, I 100% understand. And like, not to get too dark about it, but like, I think anybody who has had to experience putting an animal down, and I mean that in the ethical way of bringing him to the vet. I don't mean like if you're a psychopath. Anyone, you know, anyone who's like, oh, I do that on a Tuesday. No, I just mean like, like a couple years ago, I had to make the decision to put my dog down, and it fucked with me for months, dude. But there, you know, my wife has been a vet tech for a long time, and so you know, she would always tell me how the suicide rate in the veterinary community is really, really high. There's a number of factors, but you know, a lot of it comes down to like compassion fatigue and things like that, and just witnessing, like, you know, because
the worst day over for everybody.
Yeah, witnessing that all the fucking time. And I mean, like, you know, and because it's an animal, right? Like, we don't there's rarely a time when like you see or hear anything about like this animal died and you're like, good, that guy was a fucking dick. You know what I mean? Like, you don't personify animals in the same way. And so so it's always sad, right, when something happens to this dog or this cat or anything, you know. And so it really takes a toll on people. And let me tell you, dude, like, again, not to get super dark, and I'm not promoting self-harm in any way or anything like that, but like when I watched the process of my dog being put to sleep, if I were in that profession and I had access to that shit, and I was like in that really low, like there's no way out, like whatever, dude, that is about it. Like, if I can choose to go like that, even if it's when I'm 92 and like ready to go, you know what I mean? Like, I would pick that over fucking anything, dude. It is the most peaceful looking thing I have ever seen. And so if somebody chooses that for themselves because it's either that or fucking pain and suffering through cancer or something like that, then who the fuck am I to tell him no? You know?
Right. Well, I think like the weird thing is, and I promise we'll get off this topic here in a minute. I think the twofold. I feel like as I get older, the thing that gets interesting about that, because my wife and I are about to keep talking about it, but it's just like life. Things just, we need to do that. Yeah, we do. And then another year goes by, and then, you know, something happens, a divorce, or, you know, someone tragically passes away, or something unexpected happens. You know, we've been talking about like we need to get a will together, especially because we don't have siblings. So beyond us, when we're gone, there's not anyone else that'll be like, oh, well, you know, I'm the other family member. I can kind of take care of this shit. You know, it kind of falls on us.
There's no
individually.
next of kin. Yeah.
No. And on the one hand, a lot of that, because we don't want kids and we don't have kids. Part of that, you know, when I kind of realized that, was actually a really freeing thought of like, oh, my life is mine to live, and I don't have to live it for the idea or concept of a little one and their little ones and all these things. Like,
Sure.
Essentially, I just have to live my life for me and my wife, and it's kind of it. And it's kind of actually really freeing and nice. So it's like when you make a quote unquote stupid decision to be like, and I know I got to be to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, but you know, I'm going to drive that 3 hours and go to that show and go do this thing and spend the money I don't technically really have. I'll put it on a credit card, but you know what? Fuck it. That memory and that thing I got was totally worth all the other shit I'll deal with later. And you know, and not going too far in extremes of those kind of things, but sort of how my thought process works a lot of times. But I think the other thing in that though is, you know, we make all these concessions and we do all these things in a legal standpoint of when I'm gone, when I don't exist, when my mental capabilities are gone. We have all these things in place for others to step in and help us. But with this one part of the topic, it's so dividing that people are just like, no, we can't even talk about it. It can't be brought up. And it's just like, that's so fucking weird that it's like we go through these hoops and jumps from a legal perspective to ensure that this part of life, this last part of life, and whatever the uncertainties or whatever, that someone is there to look out for your best interest or whatever it is, basically fulfill what you deem you want done. Except for that one thing. Like apparently we just can't agree on that one thing. The other side of it too, and you know, as you were just kind of talking about having to put your dog down, which I had to put mine down on New Year's Day 2020. That still fucking sucks. I can joke about it now that she got out because she knew that the world was gonna go to shit in a couple of months, so she got out while the getting was good. I actually did see too that she went down on New Year's Day, and she was cremated on January 6th. So I was like, man, you picked two really good fucking days to. Like I didn't even notice that until I was looking at her headstone that a friend made, and I was like, or looking at the cremation thing that they were like, she was cremated on this day, and I was like, fuck, January 6th. You even knew the insurrection was coming, and we're like, I really got to get out of here. Something about 6 cents and dogs.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I can't explain it, but this month's not going to be a good one. I'm out. Yeah, I'm
out. I'm tapping out. But it was a thing where it's like, you know, that experience, as heartbreaking as it was, and you know, as you were talking about the process of how they go down, I can still very, very, very strongly close my eyes and just see the whole process. And the thing that shocked me about it was how quick, like when they go, okay, when I push this thing in, it's done. Like, and it was crazy to like, cause I was laying on the floor with Allie and they did it and I just watched her go. And it was, I thought I'd have a little more time.
Allie?
Yeah.
That's crazy. My dog's name was Alistair and I called him Allie. So yeah, that's
she.
That's
yeah, nice. It was a she named her Allie. Yeah. But yeah, it was crazy to see how quick it took. And I think the thing to me that was a big learning experience for me was, you know, because it was, I mean, I've learned through therapy that I've been through a lot of death. So it's not something I don't understand or don't know is coming and it will happen.
Right.
This was, I think, one of the first really big ones for me because it was like my dog. I had her when she was 5. She was 12 and a half. And, you know, from 23, 24 to, you know, 36-ish or 36, like I grew up and lived a lot of life in that time. And that dog taught me a lot about responsibility and putting someone else before yourself. And ironically, I joke that, you know, my wife was the only person that I had dated or had been with that she didn't interject and try to always be with me. That it was kind of like she knew that like this is a good one.
Right, that's the good one. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a lot to kind of like realize like I don't have this thing anymore, and you know I always called her my shadow. But it was a thing where there was a weird understanding, probably 15-20 minutes of just laying on the floor petting her, and I was like, what made you isn't here anymore. You're a shell, essentially. And it's really weird and hard in your mind to be like, I gotta walk away because like you're not here. The thing that's keeping me here is not here. The essence of you is not here. Right. Like now you're just a dog. And it was such kind of a mind fuck. And then I think even beyond that, you know, my first instinct usually when dealing with big traumas like that is, sadly, I don't advocate this, but it's just sort of my thing. I think it's a lot of people's things, is to just drink a bunch. So I went to the liquor store on the way home. I grabbed a fifth of Jack Daniels, and I stood outside my door that I always go in and out of the house to, and I sat there with my hand on the doorknob for probably 20 minutes, and I was like, as soon as I open this door, it's all real. Like she's not behind the door.
She's not in there.
She won't ever be there. Yeah. And it's just like so weird to be like, to have these like thoughts. And it's like and it's those. And like, it was that experience that really kind of solidified like why I feel like, you know, what we've kind of been talking about the last 15-20 minutes is why I feel so strongly the way I do. Cause it's like, I don't want that feeling for anybody. That at least if there's some semblance of like, you're at peace now, it's okay. Like, and this is a humorous way to look at it, but what I didn't get to have with Allie was I didn't get to have that last day. Like we took her in, something was wrong. You know, we had just had her have surgery the week before, and we thought, you know, everything was fine. Like she's just getting old, but like everything was fine. And literally that day, that morning when I went to play with her and she just wasn't into it, and I noticed her like gums were all white and shit, and I was like, oh, something's wrong. The doctor at the vet tech place was like, we found an abscess in her stomach. It's going to be like 10 grand to remove it. And we don't know if it'll ever come back. We don't know if we remove it, if she's done. Like, that's just where we're at now. And it's like, so you're telling me I have to put her down like right now, today. Cause like, I'm not putting 10 grand into at least into a 12-year-old dog. Like, it's just not worth it. Like if you were to tell me I get another 5 years, I might weigh the options at that point, but like what's quality of life at that point and all that kind of stuff is just not worth it.
Of course,
financially and logistically. And I love loose terms. I love seeing people who give their dog the last day. Like we went out to the beach. I gave you cheeseburgers, like just all these things that you don't get to do typically because the end result is not going to be great when you're feeding a dog that much junk food. But I feel sad that I never got that. And I think that was the turning point for me of going, I wish we would give people the ability to choose how they want to end their life in what we've been talking about, because, and as horrible, and you may think I'm joking, but it's like, I want people to have that last day of like the ice creams and the beaches and surrounded by family. And I want the memory for people to be a positive one versus sort of what I got, which is I felt fucking robbed. And I felt like I didn't get to know, which is the stark reminder of literally everyone that has passed away that I've known personally or in my family. That's how it's always been. It's just, now you're gone.
Right.
Deal with it. And it's like, that fucking sucks. I would like the happier ending of I got to celebrate you. I got to do fun things with you on your way out. And when I look back, it's not full of resentment or anger or whatever. It's happiness. And I feel like that's why my disposition on this topic is where it is, because I have too much negative anger issues with those things. And it's like, that sucks. And I don't want that for anybody.
Yeah. And I mean, I can identify with that pretty heavily. I mean, so with my dog, with my Allie, he had developed a seizure condition a few years prior to being put down, and it very unfortunately was not, a lot of dogs get seizures, right? And
was it a lab?
Of the time, he definitely had some lab in him. We don't know. He was a hunting mutt. He was mainly Brittany Spaniel, but he was a mutt. So, or I should say, his dad was a hunting mutt, and his mom was a Brittany. It was like a purebred Brittany Spaniel. So he was just God knows what. And so his condition wasn't just he would have a seizure and then he would come out of it. His condition was full-blown grand mal contorting, and he had something called status epilepticus, which sounds like a fucking Harry Potter spell. But it's
Is that where your
it
bones
means
break or whatever?
no, it means that it's
Okay.
one into the next. It means that the seizures
Oh.
do not stop most of the time without intervention. Thank God the first time they did. But the first time was the
Okay.
most terrifying thing that I've ever experienced. Like looked like something out of The Exorcist, but in a dog, right? And and so it got, so it after that, we were always prepared. We had a vial of Valium in the house all the time, because if it happened, he had to be given it. Otherwise, there was a good chance that he would not come out. It would just be one into the next, into the next, into the next, until he was fucking brain dead, basically. And the really unfortunate thing about about these seizure episodes was that his temperament would change with each one. Sometimes he would get really, really docile in between two of them, and sometimes he would get aggressive. Now, he never got aggressive with us, meaning me and my wife, but he didn't like my daughter, specifically my daughter. And my son was born in December of 2020, and in, I want to say, April or maybe March of 2020, or 2021 rather, I had been on baby duty the night before, so I was sitting in the bed holding my son, and Allie was laying next to us. He loved my son right away. Loved my son. My wife and daughter had slept in my daughter's room the night before, and so they came in to say good morning. And my daughter came around to say good morning to her brother, and it was like a tiger in the grass, dude. If I hadn't been there to grab him, he would have bitten her face off. And so
Crazy.
So we both had to make the decision. And my wife, being a vet tech for so many years, for a long time, had been telling me, like, babe, this isn't going to end any other way. Like, either we're going to have to make this call, or somebody's going to get hurt. And I was in denial about it for a long time. He had never tried to explicitly attack anybody, but he had growled and stuff like that. And it was stuff that, objectively was like, that's not a good fucking sign. But I was just,
Right.
I mean, he was the first dog that I ever had that was ever mine. Right. And so I just felt so much attachment to this dog. And so right then and there, I had to look at my wife and say, make the call before I change my mind. And so there is, I mean, and dude, I was just fucking distraught. I mean, just like punching things, crying all fucking day. And for days and days and days after that, just like, basically like sobbing alone, just saying I'm sorry over and over and over and over again. Cause like, even though it was like, there was no other choice to make, right? He wasn't going to get any better. And it wasn't going to improve for anybody. You know what I mean? And there was no other choice that could be made. It was for the safety of my kids. It was for his health, but there is something so horrible about having to make that fucking call. Having to be the one to say, do it. And your dog in the background is like, shut the fuck up, dude. This is dark. But
that was my wife's call, getting another dog, which it's funny. Because today's actually National Dog Day, is when we're recording this. I just saw. It's funny. I didn't want one, and I'm interested to hear if this is. And I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, it's fine.
But it's a thing where I didn't want the dog, and for the first, I'd say 2-3 months, my wife's like, "You love dogs. Why don't you love this dog?" And I was like, I can't put it any other way other than
it's not her.
It was too soon for me. Because the other side of it, and I think anyone that's got a dog can obviously articulate this and understand, and to a way bigger scale with kids, same thing. It's like, you can't just do anything you want to when you want to. Like, there has to be some sort of planning put in place. So my wife and I love to travel, which is great until it turns into, oh, we're going to be gone for like a weekend. Someone's got to watch the dog.
Right. We
got to make plans to, right. And so it becomes this thing where
people have on us.
Yeah. So it's a thing where, like I said, and like you were saying, we both had our dogs since we were kind of younger. It's our first, baby, for lack of a better term. Mm-hmm. And to me, I was like, okay, I don't have a kid now. Really, let's take a year, maybe a little more, kind of let there be some separation of that and processing all the thoughts and feelings and everything. Because very much is in the same boat. Like I would go to bed and the first thing I'd see is that needle and just going out. And it's like saying the same thing, crying, saying, I'm sorry. You know, I think like the final thing that I had to do, and I cried while doing it, was cleaning off our giant picture window and all the nose marks. Like that was the last remnants of Allie I got rid of. And it was really hard to even do that, because I'm like, well, now you're 100% gone. But at that point we had gotten the ashes, and she sits in the living room with a headstone that a friend made and her toys. So like she's in the living room with us at all times.
Similar,
which some people,
little mini shrine. Yeah.
But that was the only thing about it that I wanted. Was I didn't want another dog too quickly because it just felt too soon. But I really wanted that time away where it's like, okay, for 12 and a half years, I've not been able to just pick up and be like, oh, I have to be back at like 3:00 to let my dog out and feed her. Like I didn't have that freedom. That's what I wanted. But we were stuck in quarantine. So we got Frankie, and it took me a while to warm up to her, but now I enjoy having a dog, and it helped me kind of get over everything again. Although now she hates me because she hates my scooter. She hates all the shit. So she doesn't really hang out with me right now, which kind of sucks.
Right. Yeah.
Like literally we're the only two things in the house all day, and she doesn't want to hang out with me. And I'm like, cool, fuck you.
Yeah. Fuck off, dog. Yeah. Yeah. I can definitely agree with I mean, so we had another dog. We still have him. But while Allie was alive, the dog we had before him, he's a miniature pinscher. His name's Bandit. So he and Allie didn't get along, and because Allie was so much bigger than him, when they wouldn't get along, like we'd have to get in between the two of them to make sure that Bandit didn't fucking die. So so like we made the decision of like, you know, Bandit's completely house trained. We don't have to worry about him chewing anything up, like whatever. Like if somebody needs to let him out, like if they can just come and let the door, you know, just open the door real quick and then let him back in. It's not a huge deal, and he's not going to overeat or anything. Like he's good. So let's just let him live it out, and and then talk about getting another dog. And then I was on tour last year, and my wife sends me pictures of these two other miniature pinchers, and she's like, the breeder that we got Bandit from has a new thing, a puppy. And I just went, look, if you want to get dogs, get dogs. Just remember, it's all your fault. Anything that happens from this point on with these two dogs, it's your fault. It was this is what you wanted. Like, yes, I said yes, but I'm not going to tell you no. You know, it's just, and I'm starting to feel a little bit more attached to them now. They are fucking assholes, these two. But like I am starting to gain an attachment, but I don't really think it's ever gonna be what it was with him. Just because not only because, you know, because it's not him, and like that just, it's not going to get replaced, you know, but also because it's just there's a difference between a big dog and little dogs. You know what I mean? Like you don't have that like big snuggle buddy. Like you just kind of have these loud little things. Like and when they get under your feet and you like accidentally almost kill them because you're walking down the steps, it's just like there could be a real scenario where either I kill you or you kill me on the stairs. Like so fuck off. You know what I mean? Like it you get enraged. It happened to me on my way down to the studio this morning. Like the one was just, he was walking in front of me and then he just stopped. Like he just stopped and looked back at me, and I just screamed at him. Like I'm just like, dude, like this could literally kill us both. Like my neighbors must think I'm psychopaths, dude. I talk.
Oh my god, dogs.
I talk to my dogs.
Like I was just gonna say
interns. Like like when I have them outside, I'm like, just go. This is not a hard thing. You do this every day. Come on, man, pick it up. Like I literally, like, they're shitty interns is how I talk to these dogs.
It's funny you say that. I was thinking a while ago that I feel bad when I walk, like, because Frank's is good. She's like I'll send you a photo later. Allie was a black lab, so just giant, and she was part chow as well, so just a massive fucking beast of a dog.
Wow. Okay.
And like everyone's always like, that's a big boy, and I'm like, that's a girl.
Right. Yeah.
But it's a thing where Frankie is kind of a hybrid mutt of like 13 different things. She's like a medium-sized dog, so you know, I can still kind of play with her, but she's not Allie. Allie liked to roughhouse, you know, was more, you know, big, like you're saying. Frank's isn't that way at all. And Frank's is kind of very much her own dog. Yesterday, actually, it's funny you say that you almost died. like have almost died from your other 2 dogs. I went to do something. Frank's is kind of very skittish and not aware of her surroundings. So she'll do the same thing. She'll just stop. So like I already said that she doesn't like my scooter. So I was scooting to get mail. Again, one of the few, because I'm trying to do as much as I can to feel normal. And I was coming around a corner out of the kitchen into the living room, and like she just stopped dead. And like I was like, oh shit. And like had to hit the brake on it and then like tilted a little bit. And just instinctively I put my right foot out to catch myself. That's the foot I just had surgery on. And so I was like, and it's the second time I've done something, not that this time was the worst out of the 2, but it's the second time just instinctively because it's my dominant foot to like do something. And I motherfuck that dog as I'm holding onto my foot, checking, because I'm at the point now where it's like I can not have it like wrapped in anything, which has been really nice, not having like 10-pound weight on my foot. But it's also now I'm even more scared because it's like if something happens, like it's just out.
It's exposed.
So if so I'm like, oh my God, and I'm like looking, going like, oh shit, because they just took the stitches out like a few, like 6 days ago. So I'm like, oh fuck, did I just like rip this or like, and I'm stressing, and then I'm like, okay, nothing really happened, it's fine. But then like the rest of the day, she just like kind of gave me like pouty look, like, oh, you yelled at me, and I'm like, she fucking just stopped. And she even does it when we go on walks. I'm like, you can't just fucking stop, like just go. But the point is there are so many times I yell at her when we're walking, and I'm like, God, everyone must think I'm a shitty fucking owner. And then like I'll walk by like our neighbors, a couple like 3 houses down, have like a little like Shih Tzu type thing. And I just hear one day as I'm like walking by and the windows are down, shut the fuck up, Sprinkles. And I'm like, because it's barking at us. And I'm like, okay, I don't feel so bad now.
Oh my God.
And it's just like those little reminders that you're just like, okay, that's great.
Right. I'm not alone. I'm not a psycho. This is normal and okay. Yeah.
This is normal behavior. We all just yell at our dogs and we treat them like people.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. The fucking the sect of fucking Tumblr and TikTok. Is Tumblr still a thing? I don't know.
I don't know.
You know, like whatever social media is prevalent now. You know, the people who are just like I could never yell at my dogs. It's the same thing. Same thing with my kids. Like, I mean, dude, how many of us grew up and never got yelled at? Zero. Fucking zero.
Oh, I got
okay.
No, I got yelled at.
yeah. And I mean
maybe
like,
a difference in the 8. I was gonna say difference in the 8-year age gap, like where it's like I'm an 80s kid. So it's like I feel like
normal,
when you watch like
normal parents,
parenting.
Normal parents, you know, obviously I'm not talking about abusive parents, right? Like I make this joke a lot, like, but like to a certain degree, it's like there is some truth in it, where it's just like, look, I don't think I'm going out on a limb and saying that like I'd never put a hand on my kids. I don't think anyone should ever put a hand on their kids. I think anyone that does, like, and I don't mean like a smack on the ass. I mean like hitting their kids, right? And I think that anybody that does that, he's unfit to be a parent, and they should be locked up and they should be held accountable for their actions. All that being said, I fucking get it. I get it, dude. Like, like there is a feeling, maybe especially as a dude, because I think there's like as the father, like because the mother, like you had a physical connection with the child, like literally.
Are you fucking trying me right now,
dude? Okay, I'm serious. Like you're not proud of it when it happens, right? But like when an 18-month-old child fucking squares up with you, like sticks their chest out and like gives you that look of like, what are you gonna do? You're just like, you have no fucking idea what I could do. like dude, you're just like, the only reason that we're having this conversation is because man's laws will not allow me to show you a modicum of human strength. Like it's like, yeah, dude, it's fucking crazy. But I had one time I was on tour, and my front of house guy, who is not like is not somebody that you would consider like this is sort of like a cheesy term, but like, you know, he's not like a bleeding heart liberal kind of guy, you know, like he's like very like burly lumberjack looking dude, right? But he's just like super chill, like total sweetheart. And we were in Japan, and we saw some lady scolding her kid. And he was like, "Oh man,
with hot water."
Scolding, not scalding. And that's good though. I like that.
Well, you were being more specific over there, right? That's what they say.
He was like, "Oh, dude, I hate when I see that stuff. Like, you don't gotta yell at your kids, dude. It's just not necessary." And I was like, "Hold up there." I was like, I don't know about that, man.
Clock
Like
stoppers, let me tell you.
sometimes it's necessary. And he goes, nah, man, like, I don't know, but you know, maybe it's just different for everybody. Like, which I was like, bing, right. But he was like, but you know, like when my kids act out, like you just gotta like talk to them calmly and get down on their level and just like explain why what they're doing isn't cool, and they usually mellow out. And I said, okay, interesting. I said, I was at Disney World this past summer, and one of my children chose to not buy something in the gift shop. Obviously, they are not buying anything, right? But they
Right.
chose not to get something in the gift shop, and they were totally fine with this. We exited the gift shop, and as soon as that child locked eyes with its mother, and I'm saying it because my kids are in the next room. I don't want to throw it under the bus. As soon as that child locked eyes with its mother, shouted, threw a fit, right? And then in the midst of that fit, looked their mother in the eyes and said, and I quote, "I wish you weren't on this planet anymore." Okay. Their mother was not in the building when this happened. She was not in the gift shop. She had nothing to do with the decision. Had an adult said, no, you're not getting anything, it would not have been her. And an adult didn't say anything. An adult said, you can get something if you want. And this child chose not to. And the reaction then was to tell their mother that they wish she was dead. Okay. So I told my front of house that story, and he goes, oh shit. And I was like, yeah, sometimes you fucking yell at the kids, dude. sometimes you need to yell at your kids. Like, it can be necessary at times, you know. Fucking hey, dude. Like, we're literally standing in the most magical place on earth, and you just told your mom you wish she was dead. Like, get the fuck out of here.
I realized with our friend's kid that I would be more like my dad than I really would like to admit. We were going out, getting out to get dinner. You know, all you hear this kid is, I'm so hungry. I'm so hungry. I'm so hungry. Starts eating some of the rolls, and we're like, hey, slow down. You know, you got your kid's meal coming. Yeah, I'm so hungry. And I'm like, okay. And then the food comes, and then he eats like 2 bites of whatever. And then does the thing all kids do where he just kind of moves it in a way so there's a giant piece missing off the plate, but you can just tell it's all essentially located on the other third or 3/4 of the plate. And he's like, I'm so full. And then his mom's like, okay, well, just like pull the burger out. Just eat the meat. Don't eat the bun. You know, that's filling. Eat a couple more handfuls of fries. You know, whatever. No, I can't. I was like, oh, I mean, I guess we can save time now. Like, we don't have to go to the ice cream store after this like we were going to because you're full. And he's like, we're not getting ice cream? And I was like, well, yeah, you're full. We don't need to go now. And he's like, well, no. Yeah, and then so they were like, so, you know, I finally kind of fucking drop it. And then the waitress comes by and she's like, oh, do you need a box for it? I was like, yeah, we're going to the ice cream place like down the block. We're going to blend that up and put it in his ice cream. He's just going to eat this with that. He's like, Dad. I was like, oh, I can 100%. So then, you know, I have her bring out a thing, and what he didn't see, because my wife and I drove in a separate vehicle, is I grabbed the to-go box because I was going to keep going with the charade, and then I fucking threw it away when we left. But I take it back. I kept the box, but I threw the food away. And then so we show up to the ice cream place, and he's like, oh, I want. I go, you want this fucking burger and fries that you didn't eat? Because you were so full not even 4 minutes ago. And he goes, no, I wanted ice cream. And I was like, no. And then he goes, I want to. I go, well, I mean, if you're getting one, I guess you have to get the smallest one because you're not hungry. You already established that you're not hungry, so you want like a small one, right? Like a little baby one, like hey big. He's like, no, I get this. I go, well, yeah, but that's when you're hungry. You're not hungry right now. And then so, you know, they're like, come on, stop. And then he's like, oh. So then when we get into the line, the lady's like, oh, what do you want? I go, yeah, whatever he's ordering, just go ahead and throw this in there with it. This is his dinner he didn't eat, so we're just gonna, you know. And then he like starts crying. And I was like, I go, buddy, there's nothing in here. I'm just being an asshole. But I was like, oh God, I am my parents.
Dude, yeah. That's, I mean, you start realizing, well, and it happens on both sides. Like, when you become a parent, you immediately start realizing how like your parents you are. And sometimes you're like, sometimes it makes you like more connected to your parents. Like, you're just like, all right, I get it. You know, you were right, you know, whatever. But then some things you're like, okay, yeah, no, this definitely was a problem and I need to rein it in because they didn't, you know, like,
yeah.
But But then it also, like, you know, there's the whole nature versus nurture discussion that you hear people have all the time. It is fucking crazy how much nature is a thing. Like I would probably struggle to think of specific examples at the moment, but like, if you like, if for anyone listening, if you're about to have children, or you're thinking of having children, or if one day you just accidentally have one, first of all, if you do, don't panic, give me a call, I'll talk you off the ledge, everything's gonna be fine. But second of all, when that kid starts to develop its own personality, you are going to realize that it holds resemblances to members of your family that it has not met, and or like members that are dead or whatever, and you're gonna be like, yo, that's exactly like my fucking Uncle Colin, like whatever, like, and like he's been dead for 10 years. Like fucking, and yeah, just, and stuff that's not in you, you know, it's like little personality things that aren't in you, or like, you know, food, what's the word, aversions, you know, there's certain aversions or proclivities or whatever, like that you don't have, or that your partner does not have, you know, that are just fucking inherent in this kid, and you're just like, dude, like, I don't understand anything anymore. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you think you're prepared. You're like, all right, we know who made it, right? Assuming it, you know, it's just it's your biological, you didn't adopt or something like that. Like, you're like, we know who made it. We know what we're going to be dealing with. Like, we're pretty prepared for this. You're not. You have no fucking idea.
I was gonna say, or you do like do like me, go to therapy for one thing, and then end up finding out it's a bunch of familial shit, and you're like, oh, that's cool.
It's nice to have someone to blame. Yeah. It's good.
I'll tell you, the real mindfuck lately has been like, I mean, so my parents came up for the surgery because little backstory. So I was born with a cleft lip and palate, so I had to spend a lot of my earlier childhood in hospitals and stuff for various doctor's appointments and surgeries and all that kind of stuff. So those are some of my first memories. So even some of the, like, I guess, traumas of sorts, where it's like to this day, I still hate Winnie the Pooh. I still hate Mary Poppins. And there's one other Disney movie that was just on a loop when I was in the hospital for like a week and a half. So I just hate those. I haven't had a surgery since I've been an adult. I actually haven't had a surgery since I think it was like 16. So it's been a hot minute. And I was hanging out with my family recently and found out that, like, my parents would just take me to the hospital and not tell me why. Like, we're at a family gathering of like probably about a month ago, and like my aunt was like, how are you dealing with all this? I was like, oh, and then my wife's like, oh, he's not doing good at all. Like, he's been like, he kind of gets mean sometimes randomly, and will just be like totally opposite of my demeanor. And I was like, yeah, I'm just kind of.
It's always cool when your spouse says like that to somebody else while you're standing right there. Like, even if it's true, you're just like, cool, thanks. Like,
well, no, and like, I know, you know, I admitted that. I was like, yeah, you know, I've not been doing good with this. Like, the uncertainty of everything, and I'm not good with it. And she was like, and then my aunt was just like, well, I mean, it couldn't be that your parents would just take you to the hospital, and sometimes you'd go for a random checkup, and sometimes you'd literally be going for surgery. And I was like, what? And as soon as she said that, I just was like transported right back to the lobby of this hospital one time when that happened. And I went in for a surgery, and I was just like, what the fuck is happening? And I was like, oh, and then even my wife's like, oh, that makes so much more sense why you're the way you are now. And I was like, because you're not how you normally are. And I don't know why, other than the surgery, but now like a lot of this shit makes sense. And right. So it's really fucking weird. And like, and then I started getting like almost like a panic attack trauma thing. Like when they started putting like the oxygen thing on, got transported back. And then like when I looked up in my my waiting room, there's like a fucking bird, because it has to be multi-purpose for children and adults. So they have like a bird in the like animated in the lights. So that took me back to a different hospital room. And then I just like was on the verge of like freaking out and crying. And my wife's like, what's wrong? What can I do? And I couldn't even open my mouth, because I was like, when I open my mouth, if I do try to right now, I am just going to bawl uncontrollably. Yeah, and I'm not even going to be able to tell you what's happening. I'm just being brought back to like all these childhood traumas, essentially. And I was like, they're like, do you want your parents to come back? I was like, give me a minute to like get under control. And then, yeah, go ahead and bring them back. Yeah. And it was a thing where like my dad, I talked to him about a week ago, and he was like, do you have any memories of all that stuff? And I was like, I didn't, until I was just told this. And then, yeah, like before you came back, I had a full down meltdown back there. And he was like, oh, and I was like, yeah, you kind of really didn't set me up for success on that one. Like, that really sucked. And, it was really hard to also have my partner not understand why any of this is happening. And I really don't understand necessarily either until I had someone in the family tell me one thing. And then I talked about it through therapy. And then I kind of unlocked a few more things. And it was just like, oh, that really fucking sucks. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
And it's like, I know you're doing the best that you can, but their whole thing was, well, I'll say what they said, and I'll say how I feel like what it really means. We didn't want you to freak out and stress out as a kid, and worry. That's what I was told. How I take that is we didn't want to deal with you freaking out and being however you were going to be reacting to it. So it was easier for us to just not say anything. And then, whatever happens.
Right. Yeah.
And then as a 40-year-old adult, I cry in a fucking waiting room.
There's a lot of parental overcorrection on that stuff. I mean, on a much lesser degree, I have this thing, and it frustrates the shit out of my wife, and it has our entire relationship. Unless something bad happens that day, there's nothing to report. I don't share anything. And it's not because I like don't want to. It has left my brain. Like nothing bad happened that day. So the day was fine. Nothing to report. Totally normal. My parents would always say that about school. Like, how was school? That's fine. And they're like, you never say anything other than fine. I'm like, because nothing happened. Like, it was fine. But then it started popping up with like, I would see an old friend one day, and then I wouldn't mention it to my wife, or at the time she was my girlfriend. Like I wouldn't mention it to her. And then like a few days later, I'd be like, oh yeah, when I saw Taylor the other day. And she's like, when did you see him? Like, and and she's like, why didn't you like tell me? And at the time, I'm like, why do you care so much that like it's not like I was hiding it from you. Like why do you care that I didn't tell you about this? This is such an unimportant thing. And she's just like, no, but you're just not like open about anything. You don't share anything. And so then like I just like you talk about stuff as if I knew about it already. And that 100% comes from my parents. So my dad's side is nearly 100% Irish, and my mom's side is mostly German. So there is zero emotional intelligence in my family. Okay. it is literally just bury it deep down inside, and then one day we all die. And so like I would get calls. I have a distinct memory of this one because I was making a record when it happened. I got a call that said, hey, I used his name as an example earlier, but Uncle Colin, it was my dad's brother. He said, one of my dad's brothers. They said Uncle Colin just died. And Uncle Colin was not old. Okay. Like he was, older in his 60s, but he wasn't old. Like, and I was like, what?
Right.
Like, what the fuck happened here? And my mom was like, well, he had been struggling with the leukemia for a long time. And I said, what leukemia? Like, what are you talking about? Like I had no idea that he had that, and he had it for like decades, or apparently, like, I don't even know anymore. That would happen all the time. Like family members would die, and they would just be like, oh yeah, this person died. I'm like, how? Like, it is like, oh yeah, this like really chronic thing that they've had like since you've known them. like what the fuck? Like, so my mom especially, like, and it's always and I mean I do to a degree believe them, like where it's like we didn't want you to stress about that. You were a kid. Like, the kids don't need to be thinking about that stuff. And I get it. I do, but I think that's reserved, in my opinion, that's reserved for things like if I'm having financial troubles and my wife and I are under a decent bit of stress as a result of it, I'm not going to go confide in my 7-year-old about that. Right? Like, that's something where it's like, you're a kid. You don't need to know about that stuff. But as far as like, dude, I mean, I didn't even know my fucking blood type. Like I didn't just information.
I don't even think I know mine.
Right. But like my wife knows everything about her entire family. And so I mean, I think that's on the other side of the spectrum. I was like, you don't need to know that. But like not the blood type. I'm talking about weird shit. But like
right.
But like just little things like where, like I would get asked family history by the doctors. Anyone in your family ever had this? I don't think so. I have no idea. I have no clue. And it's not because I didn't know any of them. It's just because no one ever discloses anything. And so, I just realized it's just like, oh yeah, well, that's gonna be a glitch that you're gonna have to work with forever, because like I just don't. I either don't share anything, or I share way too much with like people I don't know. You know.
I mean, some would actually. There are a lot of people who say that about this show, and that's why, like, speaking of puns earlier, like that's how the show got its name. It is because I do like to drink and I like beers and stuff like that. And for a while, when I had a co-host, when we changed the name, that was part of the, like, before we started rolling. I'd open a beer, he'd open a beer, we'd talk about what we were drinking, and I was like, oh, that sounds good, because he lives in a different state. So I'd be like, oh, I hadn't heard of that, or that sounds interesting, or whatever. And then I was like, we should add that in, because I'm sure, that's some of my rapport with different people, like Patrick, for example, like when we, Jesus Christ, Trinity of Terror leg 37.
Yeah, I don't know how we did on that. That was insane.
Well, I was going to say the first one was here in Grand Rapids, so that was nice. I didn't have to go anywhere for that one. Second leg, I think, was in Detroit, because that was, because you did mostly A's on the first leg, even though for some reason, I think because of something else, maybe a radius clause from all the other touring you guys had all collectively done, decided Grand Rapids was better than Detroit. Second leg, I think, hit Detroit. Third closest one to us was in not Fort Wayne, was in Gary, Indiana at the casino. So we were like, oh, fuck it, let's go. Oh, yeah. So do I. Because the homies in Detroit were on. I remember we got to...
That was the one we didn't play, right? It was in Gary.
Yes. I was getting there. But yeah, so I remember, because there's nowhere to stay in Gary other than that fucking casino hotel. Like, there's nothing around it to stay at.
Sure.
So it was already booked up. So we stayed 25 minutes away from Gary at a place. So we weren't really trying, like, we were trying to do as much hanging out, but it's like we could only hang out so much, because then it's like, well, we got to drive back. And I remember it was also the day of the the Bills playing Minnesota. And that weird, like, Josh Allen just needed to, like, snap it, put it down, and then the Bills win, but he fumbled, and then the Vikings got it, and then went into overtime, and the Vikings won. Mm-hmm. But I remember Porter texted me, and he's like, hey, bad news. We're not making it. Our bus broke down. We're not playing. And I was like, oh. So then I shared that with my wife. She goes, oh, that sucks, because at the time we hadn't seen Porter and the Atreya dudes in a little while. So then Patrick texted me right as the game's about to end, and he goes, bad news. And I was like, you're not here either? He goes, no, we're here. We're just not playing. Spencer's voice is all fucked up. And I was like, oh. And he goes, I'm still here to hang. Get here whenever you want. I have nothing to do once the meet and greet's done. From that point on, I can do whatever the fuck. And I was like, okay. So at the time, he was on a huge seltzer kick. So we had brought in all these seltzers from back here in town, like more local.
I remember the seltzers.
Yeah. And then I brought him a fifth of whiskey that's locally. And we just sat backstage, literally, on one of the dressing cases or whatever, and just drank and watched Motionless and BVB play their sets while just trying all these different seltzers with these different glasses. I think you and Ricky walked by a couple of times going like, you guys are still here drinking? And he's like, it's a seltzer. It's like 5% split across like three people. That's like what, 2% each, or like 1 3/4% each. We're good.
Right.
And yeah. And then I remember the big to-do that night was that you were going to go out and do whatever the song was with Motionless, I think, for the first time.
That was the first time that I ever like screamed, apart from like I could like growl and stuff. That was the first time that I ever tried screaming. I don't remember how it sounded. I'm sure it was terrible. But like that show is partly responsible for like why I'm doing vocals now. That tour in general, because I got so tight with the Motionless guys, and I enjoyed doing the backup vocals that I was doing, and whatever. Yeah, that tour was crazy. I mean, I was just like filling in, so I don't have any knowledge really about like what the thought process was behind it, because originally when I was hearing about it, they were saying it was just going to be 2 legs. Like the first one was going to kind of be like B markets for the most part, and then the second one was going to be like the big one, like where we like hit everything, like all like the major markets and stuff. But we hit a lot of the major markets on the first one, and then they were talking about doing it in Europe. And then it just went, and that never happened. Thank God, honestly. Like, and then like I love all the guys on that tour. It was just like we just did it for like, I mean, you talk to literally anybody about that tour. Like I've
It
seen the
never
list of
ended.
people. Yeah, I've seen the list of people that you've had on your podcast. Like, and I guarantee you, if Trinity came up in those episodes, like everyone was like, "Oh yeah, how many fucking legs? How many years? 6 of it?" You know, like, but it lasted for so long, and it wound up being mostly like B and C markets. Like it was still a good time. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was still a good time. You know what I mean? But I think when the tour got announced, and again, this is just like total speculation. I have no idea. But I think when the tour got announced, it was so well received that everybody involved was like, "We're gonna do this for a while because this is gonna be good."
Well, it was one of those. Go ahead.
No, it was good. So,
well, yeah, no, I was gonna say, I think for me, it's one of those things where it's kind of interesting looking. I almost feel like there should be a documentary made, and maybe I'll just do like a live podcast series on it. But I was going to say, I feel like what's interesting about Trinity of Terror when you look at it, because too often, you'll see, I'll kind of back up quite a bit to kind of paint a bigger picture of like where I'm looking at this from. So I remember in high school, Godsmack and Stained went out on a tour back in like 2001, maybe 2002. And essentially Break the Cycle hadn't come out yet, but Outside and It's Been a While were like massive singles. It was a co-headline run. Godsmack had just put out Awake at that point, so they were on their second album cycle. So kind of at the like one band's about to be the next big fucking thing, and one kind of already is in that space, arenas and so forth. And the tour wasn't that long. I think it was maybe 3-4 weeks long. So I mean, about what a tour like that would do. And they did the tour again, like 10 years or 12 or 15 years later, same 2 bands. And then they took out Hailstorm at the time when they were kind of up and coming. And I remember like, it was interesting to see the tour like all these years apart. Cause I remember a lot of people were like, oh man, that was like the tour of the summer. That was one of them. If you were into hard rock or metal or whatever. And I feel like you saw a lot of people being like, oh, we probably left money on the table, not running that into other markets, doing it again, maybe like, okay, we're doing a summer tour, then we're going to do a winter tour. Or maybe in spring next year, we'll kind of run it back for a leg 2 or something like that, do a European run or something. I don't know. But it's funny that when you see it 10 years later, it was like the bands just, they aren't the same as they were then. Like they're kind of like, I remember thinking, and this is going to sound so funny to people who don't know Godsmack when they first came out, but that band felt very dangerous when they first came out. Like they looked dangerous. Like their demographic was older men that looked like they would just fucking annihilate you for being
tribal tattoos were cool back then.
Yeah, sure. And I remember like watching the pits during like the first album cycle and being like, this band's dangerous. This band, like the people who listen to this band are dangerous. And Stained was, I remember seeing them before they really broke as well, opening for Korn and such. And it's like, this is a band that is different. They're heavy in a different way. And then obviously they blew the fuck up. But then you come back and it's like, the internet had happened. And it's like, everyone knows that, oh, okay, we don't like Aaron Lewis now. Or you do or you don't. Like essentially how you feel about him is how you feel about Stained, even though it has nothing to do with his personal beliefs, in my opinion.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
And at the time they had gone way softer commercially.
What the hell just happened?
What the fuck? I have no idea.
For those who aren't listening, for those who aren't watching, my screen.
Did I say congratulations? Is that what happened?
Is that what? Congratulations. No, that didn't do it. Whatever. Balloons just animated around my face. I don't know what that was.
You know what I literally thought it was? Is like a kid, like your kid had somehow come in and just was putting a balloon up into the screen.
Yeah, dude. Well, at first, because it started with just the single balloon, and I was like, "What the fuck?" Like, it was one of those like iPhone, but I'm not on my phone. Yeah. I don't understand. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I don't either. I know hilarious. It's happened to one other podcast I watch, and it happened to a dude where he said something, and then it just like triggered fireworks or whatever, and he was like, "What the fuck?" Weird. But it was a thing where, you're 10 years removed, the internet exists, so now one band on that package tour is polarizing to a different set of fans. Godsmack isn't what they used to be. They're kind of more quote-unquote dad rock now. And, parents are bringing their kids to this show, their kids to the show. So it's just kind of like, I enjoyed it. My dad and I got to go see it when I was in high school. We went and saw this tour when it came through. And so it was kind of like a bonding moment of like, hey, this is cool. We get to do this same show again. This is fun. But I feel like too much time went between doing those tours. And I see a lot of those tours, like the only tour that really in my mind sticks out to like the level of Trinity of Terror as far as how far reaching it was here in the States was that Guns N' Roses Metallica tour in like 92, like where it seemed like they were everywhere. And it was like 18 months of that tour going everywhere. So I get it where it's like, okay, let there be a tour and let it hit everywhere. Let everyone get an opportunity to see it. Like, so I get it from that perspective. But unfortunately, I think, I mean, if I'm being fully transparent, the only reason I even went was because I had friends on the tour. So I wanted to see my friends. Like, honestly, you know, my wife and I have joked, how many more times do we have to see Ice Nine Kills? Like the set hasn't really changed since we've been seeing Patrick when, you know, Ice Nine was on a tribute tour when Silver Scream had just come out. So it's a thing where it's like, but that's the thing to me that I enjoy about seeing them is I saw them when the only stage props were JD's Jason mask. Ricky was wearing the jacket with a balloon on his mic stand. That's kind of about it. I don't think they had Chevy at the time
before the production really stepped up. Yeah.
Right. So now it's been cool for me to literally see how they're reinvesting into the set, into their production, seeing how these songs that I've already heard for the last 5 or 6 years, how are you elevating them in the live space? To me, that's fascinating and interesting. But to my wife, who was like, I'm hearing this same song, I heard this set list last time I saw them 3 months ago, and it was the same 5 months before that, and it's still the same.
Sure. Yeah, I
she has a good time. She enjoys it, but I think if you weren't like us, I think that becomes the thing where it's like, oh, it was really cool to see one leg of that. I saw all three, and I was just like, by the end. Sure. And I'm sure you, as the people on it, were probably like, it'd kind of be nice to get the fuck away from all of you and have something new happen that's different than the same day for 3 legs of a tour back to back to back.
Yeah, I mean, so for me it was kind of cool just because, like, I mean, again, like I wasn't a member of Ice Nine.
Was that your first tour with them too, by the way? Or had you done a tour before that?
No, I started with them at when they first came back from COVID at the end of 2021.
Okay.
So I can't remember what those tours were called. But yeah, I had been in another gig that some people are probably aware of. It's just that I can't explicitly say that I'm in that group, and I'm back with that group now since stopping with.
Is it the one that you posted on Instagram, but don't say in what capacity you're doing something with said band?
So sort of, yeah. I never really mentioned the name. Yeah, it's a foreign.
It's the genre of music you play and the type of children you have.
So there you go. Yeah. You can go with that.
Okay.
So yeah, there was a. Yeah,
well, damn, I wish I would have known you were doing that because you all came through on a tour on my birthday this last year, and I wasn't able to get tickets for it. Sold out. I was pissed.
Oh yeah, hit me up. I don't know what the routing's. I don't know what the routing's gonna be, but there will be something in North America. But anyway, yeah, but the Trinity stuff was cool for me just because like I got to know all the other bands on that tour. And because the Motionless guys are from PA, there were actually a couple of times I think on leg 3 where they wound up like on an off day. I think our camp was going up to Massachusetts and Motionless was going to PA. So I got to go, I rode on their bus and got to go home, for a couple of days.
Right.
So, I got to, and I became a fucking cornhole champion because the Black Veil guys always had a set of boards on their bus. To this day, if I'm on tour and we roll up in a place to get the, oh my God, Milwaukee, the rave.
Yep.
At the rave, they have a set of cornhole boards, and anytime I pull up to that place, like it's a bloodbath. Like I've never had any athletic prowess until that fucking game came along. But yeah, so I would play a lot with the Black Veil guys, and some of the Motionless dudes would participate in those sort of drunken tournaments that we would have. And I hung out with the Motionless crew a lot, and now Zach, who is Motionless's drum tech and stage manager, he's actually working for the band that I work for as well. This year at least, because Motionless isn't crazy busy this year, so he's been out with us, and that's been awesome. Just all around like great. great group of people, and it was that was probably the best thing actually of that tour. Those multiple legs of that tour was just being able to like actually have time to get to know everybody and like make some, you know, kind of lasting friendships, obviously, because I knew my time in that band, or I shouldn't say in that band, but my time working for that band was going to be finite, especially because I think around it was either March or April. I think it was like right at the beginning of leg one is when my normal gig called back about 2023. And so that's when the conversation started happening of like, okay, it's probably pretty likely that I'm going to wind up going back. So it was nice to, you know, like spend some time with all of those people and, you know, forge some kind of lasting relationships on that front before, you know, heading back.
And the irony, it took 2 people to replace you.
I'm gonna stay away from that. I'm gonna just stay safe on that front. All I know is that they're doing great. Like obviously, like me not playing with that band has not made them lose a step. I have no. I appreciate the jokey compliment. But yeah, no, I mean like.
Well, I mean, I know Doc as well, so that's the joke there too.
And
is that it's like,
I mean, Doc's fantastic. I know that. I think he's stopped now, right? So, it's Miles, and I mean, dude, like when Ricky told me that Miles is the one that they got, I was like, fucking yeah, that kid rules, dude. He's so sick.
I gotta say though, it was kind of funny because I remember, like I said, seeing the band so early on. I mean, they've had numerous lineup changes by that point too, so. You know, it's not like that's a new thing in that camp. But it was funny because I remember seeing JD, and when I saw you, and I was like, I thought JD left. I was like, is that a requirement? You have to be tall and bald?
Yeah,
and a beard.
A lot of people thought that I was JD. Resurrected, and then there were some there. I would still get after I left. I would still get a fair amount of tags where people thought that Doc Coyle was me, and I was offended for Doc, dude. I was just like, yo, like I really appreciate that y'all think that I was a devilishly handsome black man, but that's not what I like. It's not the same guy. Like I know it's a bald dude with a purple guitar, but like look a little closer, you know.
I'm trying to. The nerd in me is like, you guys, you don't play ESPs though, do you? Or do you?
No. My
guitar, that would have been the first thing that I would have noticed. It would have been like, well, that's an ESP.
Yeah, the guitar nerds will know. Yeah, I mean that's how people recognize me because the band I play for primarily, I'm masked up and whatever. So it's not really a secret that I'm a part of it. It's just they like there's a specific
anonymity.
Like, yeah, it's I don't even necessarily know that anonymity matters. I think it's just a matter of like who's representing the project and whatever, because the focus is on the singers and whatever. So it's kind of it's similar.
I have so many questions about that band too.
It's I can answer as many of them off air as you want. And
okay, one of them might be deemed weird.
Sure, yeah. I mean any sort of like general like tour questions and stuff I can talk about it. It's just like basically like giving like explicit or like personal like details or whatever is pretty much and that's really what it comes down to. It's kind of like it's almost like playing for like Lady Gaga or something, where it's like obviously like you can look up the list of people who have played for it, but you can do the same thing for us. Like we're on the Wikipedia page and whatever. But it's just something where like those players, they're not like doing interviews as like so and so from Lady Gaga, right? Like it might be listed on the resume or whatever, but like it's just they obviously don't represent her, right?
I ran into that with a buddy of mine who's the drummer for Train right now, but he's also a studio musician that's done stuff for like did like all the percussion or most. It's either all the percussion or did all of the percussion and drums on one song on Gwen Stefani's Christmas album, and stuff like that. But it was funny because like I had booked him in a band that he was in previously, like a decade before. So we just stayed in touch since that. And it was a thing when I put it out, I had put him in the band that he's currently in. And he was like, yeah, you can just change that. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not technically in the band. And I was like, you've been in the band. You're on like the newest record. You've been in the band touring for the last like 5-6 years. You're on the new record as the drummer. Like, aren't you in? He was like, yes, but no. It'll just make things easier if you do this. And I was like, okay. And so it's like, I understand a little bit of that side of things, but it's like, to me, it's one of the few times you could argue something in a layman's terms of like, are you not listed on this album as what you do? Yes. Are you not touring with this band and have been for the last X amount of time? Yes. Then you are a member of that band. Even if you legally, in some sort of legalese, are not technically, and you're just a hired gun, you still are in that band. Like, whatever anyone wants to say, I'm sure Jason Hook will always be remembered for being in Five Finger Death Punch, even though I would still go back and be like, he was in, I keep wanting to say Hillary Duff's band, but I think it was actually, no, I think it was Hillary Duff. But it's like, I still think of him as being in that band, just like, weird thing. And I've been trying to get this guy on the podcast for years. Grant Mickelson, who used to be Taylor Swift's guitar player with like the giant fucking hair, like looked like a rock star when the rest of the band looked country.
Yeah. Right.
I've been after that dude for so long, but it's funny because like, even if I were to talk to him now and I'd be like, you were in Taylor Swift, you were in her band, everything she did, all the music videos, everything, you are in them. That's
right.
As far as I'm concerned, and everybody else's, that's how you're going to be known, as the person from blah, blah, blah. Whether you legally were or whatever, I don't care about that. But just for the sake of making a graphic to say who you may know this person from, you were X Taylor Swift, or you were X Ice Nine Kills, or you were X whatever. Like, you spent time in that band. It's documented. You exist. So you are in that band as far as I'm concerned, and most everybody else.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's, I totally understand the I won't say distinction, but I get maybe the lack of distinction, the sort of deliberate lack of distinction on any given band's part is right. Because when there is especially if it's something where there's a lot of hired guns or past members or things like that. I mean, a lot of times there's like contracts and stuff involved and whatever. So when there's contracts involved, especially with other people, it becomes very important, like how you define your role or previous role or something like that, right? Because sometimes like if there was a partner or something that left, like their contract, like their exit probably included a contract which has some really specific stuff in it that you might not have because you were just an employee, right? So
right.
So however the public may see Taylor Swift's old guitar player and stuff like that, I'm sure he'll be so like, if Justin Derrico ever stops playing for Pink, I'm always gonna know him as the guy that was playing for Pink. You know what I mean?
Shreds.
But yeah, he's so fucking good.
Dude, that like his Bohemian Rhapsody, like the way he's able to get those tones, stupid.
His I mean, what he's able to do on a Les Paul, just really, because I've never been able to play like that on a Les Paul, and I want to so bad. He's so fluid. But yeah, so I just think, and I mean, I'm sure to a degree, like the fans of the band that I play for, the ones who like know who everybody is and whatever, like they'll always like attach our identity to that band in some way. I think even more so the band that came before us, because the band that came before us, the original guys, they didn't have masks, they were just in makeup. Okay. And when the band was smaller and they were playing on smaller stages, like everyone was kind of like in the same area as one another. There wasn't so much separation between the artist and the band. So right. The fans have a lot of, still to this day, have a lot of emotional attachment to those guys. But the cool thing about this gig is that, like, if any one or multiple people aren't available, or proximity is a thing or whatever, like you can bring the other band back or one of the other musicians back, or you can bring other people that it can, it's like everyone's Batman, right? Anyone can wear the mask. So it helps with that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's all, I mean, it all just comes down to like business and branding and whatever, there are people, I'm sure, that will recognize me from my time in Ice Nine, and then there are people who would see Doc Coyle and think that it's me, or you know what I mean? Like, and I mean, like, I remember I was in an airport. This is like I guess a perfect way to like sum it all up. Like, I was in an airport and I had my guitar on my back, and this guy, random dude, comes up to me, probably in his 20s, and he's just like, "Oh, you in a band, right?" And I guess I was in a good mood that day, right? And I was like, "Yeah, about to catch this next flight, whatever." And he was like, "Oh, what's the band you play for?" And I told him, and he was just like, "Whoa, you're famous." And I was like, "No, I'm not." And he's like, "Yeah, you are." I was like, "You didn't know what band?
You didn't know who I was."
Like, you know what I mean? So, yeah, like, so I mean, not even close. Like, I don't walk around like at like festivals or anything like getting recognized as like, "Oh, weren't you the guy that played for," like, no one.
Aren't you Doc Coyle?
Yeah, right. Aren't you the guy in Bad Wolves? Yeah, no, nobody. Yeah, so I mean, I would definitely put some distinction in terms of like my involvement there, just because like I was never in music videos or anything like that. But like, but I understand like why why people would continue to make connections or whatever.
I want to pitch a quick skit for you, where you go around just to people and you live your life as if you were Doc Coyle, but as your name. So you like, people go like, "What's your band name?" You're like, "Oh, I'm in Good." Damn it, what was the other? Oh, I'm in Good Coyote.
good Coyote. Nice.
Sure, just weird shit like that, where you just change things slightly, and you're like, and it's just following you, pretending to be Doc Coyle, but not doing anything. It doesn't sound as funny, but I just imagine it like an Adult Swim like 12-minute thing that you're just like, "What the fuck is that?"
when you first started talking about me going around pretending to be Doc Coyle, I was like, "Dude, in the current climate, there's no way this works."
Yeah, no, how I pitched it is how it will work. You just pretend, you still be you, pretending to be how people think you're Doc Coyle somehow.
Right? Yeah. No, it's
and then he can go around pretending to be you as Doc Coyle.
If Doc Coyle would ever have any desire to pretend to be me, I would argue there's something wrong with Doc Coyle. That dude,
I feel like I feel like if you were on an episode of X-Men right now, he'd be like, "Yeah, but you got the sweet picking, and as a fellow ball brother, and blah blah blah." He'd hype you up real well to where you'd be like, "Man,
he's a very good hype man." Yeah, I haven't met him personally. I've talked to him a couple of times on like socials and stuff like that. Seems like a very good dude. I mean, like I haven't met a single person that has anything negative to say about him, and I think that kind of speaks volumes, because he's been in the scene for like a minute. God forbid has been around for
God forbid.
a very long time. So yeah, I mean, he's just kind of killed it forever.
Yeah.
So yeah.
True Renaissance man. So I feel like I would be a little remiss if we didn't talk about the whole thing that you were supposed to come on here for, which, I mean, if you actually listen to the show,
by now I think anybody is like, "What band is this guy in?"
He won't even mention the band he's in, like it's a fucking mystery.
Right. Yeah. So let me get this straight. You had a guy in who's supposed to be in a band and might have been in another one, and you just talked about
who might be Doc Coyle but isn't. You had a Doc Coyle impersonator on your show.
Yeah. You had not Doc Coyle from insert band X, and you just talked about your dead dogs and whether or not you think that it's okay to yell at your kids for 3 hours. Like,
so that was part one of my chat with Chris, again, of Hillhaven. Go check them out. They have a lot of music videos and music coming out, a lot of stuff that they are putting out to stay engaged. You'll hear more of that in the next episode. But it is a thing where they are a new band. They are trying. But this first half I thought was really fun, just getting to know Chris, getting to hear more about his family life, getting to hear more about just who he is, and some fun touring stories as well. So very much appreciate Chris for taking the time, especially I think literally he had just gotten back from Jakarta the night before. So crazy. I couldn't imagine doing any press after being on a flight for that fucking long. Holy shit. But Chris is a great dude. Hit it off really well, obviously, as you heard. And I'm very excited to get out part 2. Got to wait a couple of days, but that should give you plenty of time to digest all of this and get ready for the next part. But I'm going to wrap this up a little bit faster than I normally do, just because you got another 2.5 hours coming in a couple of days. But if you would like to keep up with Hillhaven, you can find them on Facebook at Hillhaven Band, Instagram at Hillhaven Official. and Twitter at Hillhaven Band as well. If you want to keep up with Chris, you can find him on Instagram at Chris Lawrence Kelly, and Twitter. I didn't find anything for him. I might have just not found the right way to search for it, but I didn't find anything. So if there happens to be a Twitter account, go follow it and let me know what it is, because I don't know. If you'd like to keep up with him, though, he also has chriskpro.com. And then pretty much on all of Hillhaven's things, there is like a Linktree type thing to merch, to YouTube videos, and all those kind of things. Go support those dudes. Keep on with what's going on with them. Really interesting time to kind of get ahead and be in with a newer band that's kind of at the ground swell of whatever they're about to do. A couple of newer bands that have kind of got me excited. House of Protection with Eric from Night Versus, and with Stevis from X the Chariot, and obviously both of them were in the Fever. They've been dropping new music videos the last like month or so. It's been really crazy. Caleb Shomo from Beartooth wrote a really cool Instagram post about it that I saw on Stevis's Instagram stories the other day. So a lot of cool new music coming out from people who have kind of paid their dues and are just kind of doing new things that are fun and exciting for them, which is always exciting as a listener, because honestly, sometimes that's where the good stuff is where maybe the more commercial projects is what pays the bills and so forth, but it's like these weird little things where they're like, I just wanted to do this and it made me feel creatively filled, so I'm going to do this. Sometimes that's where the good stuff actually is, so you got to seek it out. And it's always fun kind of being at the forefront of something. So as time goes by, you can be like, oh, I remember being there when the first whatever. I mean, it's crazy right now. Linkin Park just came out with obviously announcing a new album, putting out new music. And it's been kind of crazy looking at some of these old videos of, Linkin Park when they first came out with like the Hybrid Theory record, and the lead up to that, and all the swell and the buzz of this band, and where do they come from, and the sound was different, and the look, and all these kind of things. That it's crazy to look 20 something years back now on those memories and be like, oh man, I remember like getting the demo cassette with like a couple of tracks on it and things like that. But now here we are all these years later. The band's massive and they're returning back to form, and that may not be Hillhaven's career path, but you never know. I'm sure back in the day when all the guys in Fall Out Boy were in hardcore bands, I'm sure when they started a pop punk thing, the last thing expected was to become one of the biggest bands ever, and that is what happened. So you never know. But all that said, if you like keep up with the podcast, you can find me simple enough, BrewSpeakPod, on all your major social media platforms. You can email me at BrewtallySpeaking@gmail.com with guest suggestions, or to keep the conversation from an episode going, or slide in my DMs or whatever. I usually try to check those and respond as quickly as I can. And we can't forget about Rockabilia. Head on over to rockabilia.com. Check out their online store where they're doing so many things. They are right in the thick of all the Halloween band collab drops that they're doing. I think they just, either as of when I'm recording this right now, they're about to announce another one, or they just did. But they're rolling out the Halloween designs and the collaborations, and it has been pretty crazy to see some of the bands that they've gotten. I think as of right now, this year they're doing something with Twisted, The Funeral Portrait, Attila, Venom, and Falling in Reverse, and Ghost, I think, are all the bands so far that have been announced. Crazy to just see what they're doing. And like I said, always working with some of the biggest and best bands out there right now, doing crazy merch drops and different collaborations on things. And I know that there's some stuff in the pipeline that you're going to be very excited about. So always head over there. Keep supporting them for supporting the show. Use our code BREWtally at checkout and take 10% off your total purchase order. Thanks again to all the guys and gals over at Rockabilia. And for the Brewtally Speaking podcast, I am John, and I'll see you in a couple of days with part 2 with Chris Kelly. I'll talk to you all then.